Naruto, advancing through pure effort in Konoha. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476 Solution. After noticing the opponent's move, Qingming immediately turned his head. In an instant, he pushed the inside of the Sharingan to the limit and carefully observed the opponent's every move. After seeing that the last seal ended with a yin seal, he guessed that the opponent was likely to perform some kind of fire ninjutsu. With this thought, Qingming planned to perform water-style, water array wall to block the opponent's fire ninjutsu attack. However, at this moment, he suddenly noticed that there was an unfamiliar chakra around him. At the same time, a sense of crisis also came to his mind. Qingming instantly realized that something was wrong, so he immediately gave up the plan of direct confrontation and dodged behind a big tree next to him. And almost at the moment he left the original place, a ball of fire appeared out of thin air, as if it had ignited the area. It can be imagined that if he had not dodged in time, the ball of fire would definitely appear directly on his body. By then, even if he could survive with his 19-point physical fitness, he would probably end up seriously injured. This made Qingming feel cold in his heart, and he couldn't help but secretly said, "Sure enough, at any time, we can't underestimate the enemy, especially these ninjas raised by raising goo, even more so." Wait, suddenly, Qingming realized that this ninjutsu seemed familiar. He remembered that the Konoha Anbu had such a secret ninjutsu, called Fire Style, Unburn Art, which had the effect of igniting the enemy from a distance. After he had mastered several fire-style ninjutsu, he thought about whether he could learn a few more. And the distinctive ninjutsu of fire-style, Unburned Art was naturally within his consideration, and even ranked at the top. Unfortunately, there was no chance. Unexpectedly, he encountered it today. Although the process was not very wonderful, it was still encountered, wasn't it? And by chance, the whole process of the opponent's casting just now was seen by him through the Sharingan. In this way, the conditions for the Sharingan's copying ability to be activated were met. In other words, he has already learned this technique. With a thought, Qingming opened the proficiency panel. As expected, there was a new skill quietly added on it, Fire Style, Scorching Technique, Level 1, 1/200. However, with only Level 1 proficiency, it is obviously not useful in combat, unless he can use illusions to affect the opponent like Kakashi. However, this possibility is almost zero. Not to mention that these root ninjas are experienced in combat and will not be easily hit. Even if they are hit, with the special training they have undergone, the instant illusion will not affect them for long. What's more, there are two opponents who can cooperate with each other. Therefore, Kakashi's way of dealing with Zabuza is not suitable for him. Moreover, there is no need for him to make things so complicated. The two root ninjas in front of him are indeed strong, but they are only at the level of special jonins who are good at fighting, or even worse. With this kind of strength, they may be able to hold on for a while when facing other jonins, or even retreat unscathed, but it is impossible to face him. In an instant, Qingming gathered his thoughts and stopped thinking about it. Then, he reached out and took out several kunai from his ninja tool bag, shooting them at the root ninja who had just performed the ninjutsu. Then, a green light flashed on his body, and he performed the instant sword technique. Then, his entire speed soared, and in just a blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the root ninja who was flying backwards. Swoosh, another sword was swung out. This time, the root ninja had time to react, and immediately raised the kunai in his hand to block Qingming's attack. Ding, the long sword and kunai collided, making a crisp metal collision sound. Qingming separated at the touch, and the moment he put away the sword, he performed the instant sword technique again. Swish, his whole person disappeared in front of the root ninja, and when he reappeared, he had already come to his right side. The wind chakra was injected into the long sword, and the blade of the long sword in his hand showed an invisible edge. Then, Qingming swung the sword. In an instant, a strong sense of crisis struck my heart. Uchiha felt a chill on his neck. Before Qingming's long sword touched him, the strong wind on it tore his skin and oozed a little blood. However, despite this, Uchiha remained calm. Almost in an instant, he made the right response. He did not try to dodge, but waved the kunai and stabbed Qingming. Obviously, this was to force Qingming to defend himself in exchange for his life, or at least make him give in. In this way, he had enough time to dodge. Would Qingming exchange his life for his life? The answer is of course no. However, he would not let the other party go easily. Just as the kunai was about to stab him, his body glowed with the green light again, and it was obvious that he had performed the instant sword technique again. This is the power of the instant sword technique. After perfection, there can be almost no pause between the two performances. Of course, continuous performance also consumes a lot of chakra. However, Qingming can still accept it. Puff! The kunai in his hand stabbed the air. Jiju's heart tightened, and just as he was about to look for Qingming's trace, he felt a chill on his back. Without any hesitation, he leaped forward and hid in front. On the way, he did not forget to raise his hands to make seals and perform the substitution technique. However, Qingming's speed of movement was still beyond his expectations. With a swish, Qingming's long sword chopped his back, leaving a deep blood mark. Bits of blood splattered. Jiju said nothing, endured the pain, and performed the substitution technique to avoid Qingming's second attack. Qingming glanced and locked the opponent's latest position, and was about to perform the instant sword technique again to get closer. But at this moment, a flame burned straight towards him. Qingming's eyes turned slightly, and his sight looked in the direction of the flame, and saw another root ninja making seals with both hands and performing a technique. Without any hesitation, Qingming immediately jumped back and avoided the attack of the flame. However, the root ninja was relentless and continued to spit flames at him. Qingming dodged several times in succession and finally gained enough time to complete the seal and perform the ninjutsu, water style, Big Samiden Jutsu. A giant shark condensed by chakra appeared and rushed straight towards the burning flames. Originally, water style was an advantage over fire style, and now he also performed the water style, Big Samiden Jutsu that specifically countered various ninjutsu. The result is self-evident. The shark opened its mouth and swallowed all the flames. At the same time, its body expanded rapidly and continued to pounce on the root ninja in the distance. Taking this opportunity, Qingming performed the instant sword technique and came to the root ninja who was seriously injured by him, and swung the long sword in his hand without a second thought. The fierce murderous intent rushed towards him, and the face under the mask of the poison wine remained unchanged, and the pair of dark pupils were still so cold. Without any hesitation, he did the same thing and stabbed out the kunai in his hand again, trying to use his own life to exchange for the opportunity to injure Qingming. However, his idea was good, but his action was too slow. Almost at the moment when he stabbed out the kunai, Qingming once again performed the instant sword technique and came to his side. The long sword was swung out, and without any surprise, Qingming chopped off the opponent's head with one sword. In an instant, blood gushed out from the opponent's neck like a spring, dyeing a large area of the surrounding land red. Chapter 477 Intelligence. Seeing his companions being killed, the root ninja who had just dodged the shark missile ran away without any hesitation. It was not that he was timid, or what? For the root ninja who had undergone the self-annihilation training, there was no such concept as timidity in his heart. The reason why he wanted to escape was just to bring back the information here. Unfortunately, his movements were fast, but not as fast as Qingming. Almost at the moment he moved, Qingming performed the instant sword technique, surpassed the opponent, and blocked him. Looking at Qingming who suddenly appeared in front of him, the root ninja did not hesitate at all and immediately swung the kunai in his hand, trying to cut his throat. This attack was so fast and urgent that ordinary ninjas might not be able to react. But Qingming was different. With a Sharingan, he easily captured the opponent's movements, and then raised his head slightly to avoid it. Seeing this, the root ninja immediately jumped back several times and pulled away. At the same time, he threw several kunai in succession, shooting at different parts of Qingming's body. In an instant, Qingming pushed the 3 Magatama Sharingan to its limit. Then, the kunai shot towards him as if in slow motion. Qingming dodged 2 of them calmly and was about to continue dodging. At this moment, he suddenly found that there were some imperceptible steel wires tied behind these kunai. The surface of these steel wires has been specially treated, and there is no reflection even under the sun. Not only that, after careful observation, he also found that these steel wires seemed to be quenched with poison, and faintly exuded a special smell. If he did not have the Sharingan and amazing insight, he would not have discovered any clues for such a trap. If so, he would be in big trouble. There is no other reason. These steel wires have formed a huge net under the influence of these kunai in the field. If he really dives into it, his speed will inevitably be affected. At that time, No matter how fast his instant sword technique is, it will only be a fish in a net, a bird in a cage, and he will not be able to escape. Tisk, tisk, it's really insidious, Qingming muttered to himself and began to think about how to deal with it. Logically speaking, since he had discovered the problem, he should have dodged it in advance. However, Qingming didn't want to do that. He quickly glanced around and confirmed that there was no one around, then he plunged in without hesitation. This time, even the root ninja was stunned. He set up such a trap and never thought that Qingming would fall into it. After all, he had the Sharingan and could probably see through his arrangement. The reason why he did this was just to buy some time to escape. He never thought that Qingming would get in like a fool. Is there something fishy about this? The root ninja was suspicious. However, the opportunity could not be missed. Almost instinctively, he responded at the first time. He saw his hands dancing and pulling the steel wire in his hands, which suddenly reduced the poison net in front of him by half. The gap in it no longer allowed normal humans to pass through. In other words, Qingming was completely trapped in it. Next, unless the wire mesh was forcibly opened, there was no way to escape. This time was enough for the root ninja to complete the final blow. He suddenly thrust two kune into the ground. And the source of the wires was fixed by him. Then, he raised his hands, quickly completed the seal, and then opened his mouth to perform some powerful fire escape ninjutsu. In an instant, a flame spurted out of his mouth, instantly covering the area where the wire mesh was located, engulfing Qingming inside. 1 second, 2 seconds however, after several breaths, there was still no movement, as if there was no one. Suddenly, an ominous premonition came to his mind. The root ninja stopped the spell without any hesitation. The next moment, the flame disappeared, and the wire mesh was empty. Seeing this scene, the pupils of the root ninja shrank suddenly, and he turned around and planned to escape. However, at the moment he turned around, a pair of strange eyes that looked like black suns came into his sight. Then, an irresistible strong mental force pulled him into the illusion. During this period, the root ninja also wanted to break free. Unfortunately, under the illusion Sharingan activated by the Mangekyo Sharingan, he had no room to resist at all. Yes, it was the Mangekyo Sharingan. Just now, when Qingming realized the existence of the poison net, he had two choices. One was to retreat actively, and the other was to take advantage of the situation. In the end, he chose the latter. Indeed, he was not willing to use the Mangekyo Sharingan in front of others, because it would increase the risk of his exposure. However, when it is time to use it, he would not leave it unused. Just like just now, if he chose to retreat, although he was sure to take down the root ninja in the end, it would undoubtedly take more time. And as time goes on, it is inevitable that there will be complications. He did not forget that there is an underground base on the island under his feet. Who knows how many ninjas are there? Qingming didn't want to gamble, nor did he want to waste time, so he chose to play along, luring the other party to stop and attack him. Then, he took the opportunity to open the Mangekyo Sharingan, activated the ability of heaven, passed through the poison net in flames, and came behind the root ninja. When he found out that something was wrong and wanted to escape, it was too late. With just one Genjutsu Sharingan, he controlled the other party. Looking at the root ninja in front of him, Qingming didn't waste time and immediately guided him to reveal his memory in the illusion. And Qingming looked for the information he wanted from it. Time passed by minute by minute. After about 7 or 8 minutes, Qingming stopped guiding. Opening his eyes again, Qingming glanced at the headless corpse in the distance and the figure in front of him who was still immersed in the illusion, and muttered, "It's related to Danzo." Before, when he guessed the identities of these two people, he estimated that the experiments in this secret base were related to Danzo. Now, it is confirmed. From the memory of this root ninja, he already knew that these two people were sent by Danzo to protect this base. By the way, they were also responsible for capturing experimental subjects for the base. As for Orochimaru's secret base, why did Danzo send people here? The answer is actually very simple. Orochimaru has not yet left the root organization, so he can't hide his experiments from the other party. In addition, he has to preside over the overall situation in the Rain country and doesn't have much time to look after this place. So, the two sides naturally came together. However, Qingming was not interested in their dealings. He only knew that his trip was not in vain. Although this root ninja was not a researcher and did not know any relevant knowledge about human body modification, Qingming could still be sure from the other party's memory that there was indeed the knowledge he needed here. Moreover, He had already found the entrance to it. There were two in total, one on the island and one in the sea, both of which were very hidden. Not only that, the distribution of the guard force inside, the arrangement of the traps, and the overall structure of the base also emerged in his mind. With this information, it would be easy for him to sneak in. Chapter 478 Infiltration. However, before sneaking in, he still had one thing to do. He walked up to the root ninja who was trapped in the illusion, raised his hand to form a seal, and performed the chakra absorption technique. Good resources can't be wasted. With a murmur, Qingming pressed his palm on the chest of the root ninja. The next moment, a stream of chakra flowed out of the opponent's body and drilled into his meridians, followed by mental energy and physical energy. Until the last moment of his life, the root ninja did not wake up from the illusion. This shows how powerful the illusion he performed under the blessing of the main Gekiyo Sharingan is. Putting his body together with another root ninja, Qingming formed a seal again and performed another ninjutsu, fire style, Sashoku. Bang! A ball of fire burned on them, and as Qingming continued to supply chakra, the fire burned more and more vigorously, and finally completely burned the bodies of the two. Whoosh! A gust of sea breeze blew by. The ashes of the two people fluttered and soon spread all around. At this point, the last trace of the two people disappeared from the world. In this way, Qingming no longer had to worry about someone discovering anything unusual through their bodies. Retracting his gaze, Qingming walked to a place in the forest according to the information in his memory. Soon, he came to the back of a low mountain. Here, there was a cave. It looked inconspicuous, but it was actually the entrance to the underground base on the Ghost World Island. In addition to this entrance, this underground base also has an underwater passage outside. However, that road is not only difficult to walk, but also a waste of time, so Qingming naturally would not choose it. Looking at the entrance in front of him, Qingming thought for a while, raised his hand to make a seal, and performed the shadow clone technique. Bang! As a cloud of chakra smoke dissipated, a figure suddenly appeared beside Qingming. Qingming looked at him, and then nodded to each other. Then, the two of them made a seal together and performed the transformation technique. Qingming himself became the root ninja whose memory he had just read, codenamed Chi, and the shadow clone became another person, codenamed Jeju. The two checked each other and confirmed that there was nothing missing, then walked into the cave one after the other. At first, the cave was a little narrow, but as they went deeper, it became more and more spacious, and the direction of the cave began to gradually go down. Although Qingming had seen all this through Kai's memory, walking in it in person still felt familiar and strange. Being alert to the movements around them, Qingming and the shadow clone continued to move forward. Finally, after a few minutes, he saw a cliff. Under the cliff was a dark river. Without any hesitation, Qingming immediately called the shadow clone, and according to the reaction of an ordinary ninja, he gathered chakra at the bottom of his feet and walked down the cliff. Going against the dark river, they entered a cave with a large pool of water. The entrance to the underground base was in this pool of water. Qingming didn't waste any time. He and his shadow clone dived into the water and soon found a passage, eventually entering the base. "Who are you?" As soon as they entered, two figures rushed out, holding kunai in their hands, and shouted at them. Hearing this, Qingming looked at them and saw that the two were wearing tattered clothes, and their exposed skin was covered with fish scales. Experimental subjects, Qingming murmured in his heart. Then, he quickly flipped through the memory obtained from the root ninja. From his memory, he already knew the identities of the two. As he guessed, the two were the experimental subjects of the base. He couldn't remember their names, but only knew two code names. Number 7, Number 8, why are you here? Qingming looked at the two and asked back. Hearing this, the two immediately stopped. After seeing the current appearance of Qingming and Shadow Clone, he hurriedly said, Master Jeju. Master Chi. Master Kazuhiko saw that you haven't come back for so long, so he asked us to come and see you, Kazuhiko. Hearing this name, Qingming immediately thought of the current head of this base, whose name is Kimura Kazuhiko, a researcher affiliated with a root organization. Through Kai's memory, he found that this man was extremely loyal to Danzo, but also a relatively crazy guy. Nowadays, the experiments in this base are conducted by him under the guidance of Orochimaru. As for the later Shiansei, he is only 15 or 16 years old now. Although he has begun to show his talents, he does not have the ability to stand alone. Only when Orochimaru defected and was ready to abandon this base, he would take charge of the power. However, these have nothing to do with Qingming. Now, he just wants to capture Kimura Kazuhiko and then control the entire base. With this thought, he looked at the two base guards who were transformed from experimental subjects in front of him, and said, "The trouble has been solved, the alarm is lifted." "Yes, Lord Chi." X2 Upon hearing this, the two immediately responded and said yes, not daring to have any objections. Seeing this, Qingming nodded, and then asked again in a cold tone, "Where is Kimura Kazuhiko now, Your Excellency?" "In experimental area number 3, the two replied in unison. Qingming could hear that when the two talked about experimental area number 3, their voices trembled involuntarily. Just thinking about it, Qingming understood the reason. According to the memory of the root ninja code named Red, experimental area number 3 is the adult fusion experimental area, and it is also the area where the two people experience transformation. In this way, it is normal to leave a little psychological shadow. In addition to experimental area number 3, there are 3 other experimental areas in the base. They are experimental area number 1 for embryo fusion, experimental area number 2 for infant fusion, and experimental area number 4 for non-human biological fusion. After more than 2 years, nearly 3 years of war, Qingming thought he had hardened his heart, but when he recalled some of the experimental scenes, he still felt uncomfortable. Sure enough, these crazy scientists deserve to die. Qingming stood there and muttered softly. "What? Lord Jiju?" The two people in front of him didn't hear his words clearly and spoke in confusion. Qingming came back to his senses and shook his head and said, "Nothing." After that, he looked at the two people and waved his hand again, saying, "Okay, you can go down." "Yes, Lord Jiju." X2 Hearing this, the two people turned around immediately and prepared to leave without any doubt. However, the moment they turned around, they felt a pain in the back of their necks, and then they fell into coma. Looking at the two people who were easily subdued, Qingming shook his head and said, "Without systematic training, even if you have power, you can't use it even if you have it." According to Qingming's observation, the amount of chakra in the bodies of these two people has reached the average level of Chunin. Logically speaking, their strength should not be too bad. But the fact is, if any of the Chunin from the 5 major ninja villages came here at this time, they would basically be able to defeat the two of them. This is the result of having power but not knowing how to use it. Unless they are in the water, they can play some of the advantages of amphibious ninjas. Otherwise, with their untrained strength, they can only defeat some Sharingan at most. Kimura Kazuhiko arranged them to be the guards of the base, probably with a mentality of making good use of waste. However, these two people are conscientious. Since becoming the guards of the base, not only have they performed their tasks seriously, but occasionally they have acted as Kimura Kazuhiko's minions when Shiju and aka are not around, and captured experimental subjects for him outside. It can be said that they have transformed from victims to perpetrators. In this way, Qingming will not be polite to them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 479, Exposed and Captured. With the idea that resources should not be wasted, Qingming raised his hand to seal and performed the ninjutsu again, Chakra Absorption Jutsu. Soon, the chakra of the two people on the ground was completely drained by him. The life breath of the two people dissipated. Originally, Qingming also planned to use a fire-style, Great Fireball Jutsu on each of them to destroy the bodies, but considering the possible commotion, he finally gave up. Anyway, the appearance of the two people was just disguised by him and the shadow cloned through the transformation jutsu. Even if someone discovered something in the end, it didn't matter. What's more, when he leaves this base, it's hard to say whether they can still exist, let alone two corpses. Hiding the bodies of the two people in a corner, Qingming immediately walked towards the number 3 experimental area, according to the memory of the root ninja, code-named Red. On the way, he encountered several base guards who were transformed from experimental subjects. Qingming showed no mercy and killed them all. If these people were still experimental subjects, he might consider letting them go, but when they chose to go along with the root ninja, he would not show any mercy. As for the reason, Qingming didn't want to listen, nor did he want to know. When he did things, he was particular about obeying one's heart. Since he felt unhappy, he would just kill them, without finding so many reasons. In this way, he went forward, killing all the way, and finally arrived at the number 3 experimental area. It can be seen that this is not so much an experimental area as a prison, with dozens of cells densely distributed inside. In these cells, civilians were imprisoned. They basically had traces of transformation, and their life breath was not stable. Some of them were even dead, and they exuded a disgusting breath. Tap, tap, tap. Qingming and the shadow clone continued to move forward. Suddenly, a voice came from the front. "You are back." The voice was very light, but it was particularly clear. Qingming looked in the direction of the voice and saw a laboratory table in front of him, on which lay a middle-aged man covered with scales. Next to the middle-aged man, there was another figure standing. Qingming recognized the other person. It should be the root ninja codenamed Red who is replacing him. He was none other than Kimura Kazuhiko. At this time, the other person had his back to him and seemed to be busy with something in his hands. Qingming continued to walk forward without stopping, and at the same time, he made a hem sound from his nose, as if responding to the other person's previous question. Kimura Kazuhiko heard his response and turned around. It can be seen that this is a young ninja wearing flat glasses, about 30 years old, wearing a white coat. If it weren't for the blood on it, he would really have the temperament of a big brother next door. Unfortunately, this is an out-and-out demon. Kimura Kazuhiko looked at him. While organizing the tools in his hands, he said, "The experimental subjects are used up. Remember to replenish some tomorrow." Qingming snorted again and continued to move forward. "Oh, right." At this moment, Kimura Kazuhiko seemed to have thought of something and asked, "What's the matter with the chakra outside just now?" "Nothing." Qingming uttered 3 words, and felt that the distance was about right. So he wanted to open the Sharingan and control the other party. However, at this moment, Kimura Kazuhiko seemed to have noticed something, and his nose twitched slightly. The next moment, his pupils shrank suddenly, and he looked at Qingming and shouted, "You are not Chi. Who are you?" "Guess," Qingming responded, and then instantly opened the Sharingan. What? Seeing this pair of Sharingans, Kimura Kazuhiko was both shocked and angry. However, his reaction was also very fast. Almost at the moment when Qingming activated the Sharingan and released the illusion, he closed his eyes. At the same time, he retreated. Seeing this, Qingming did not hesitate at all, and immediately drew out the long sword at his waist. A green light flashed on his body, and he performed the instant sword technique. In an instant, his figure appeared beside Kimura Kazuhiko. Swoosh! The long sword in his hand was swung out. Qingming slashed at the opponent's shoulder. The reason why he didn't aim at the vital parts, such as the neck and the head, was to leave him alive. The knowledge he needed was obtained from the opponent. Although the root ninja codenamed Red knew a lot of things, he was not deeply involved in the part related to the experiment. Therefore, he didn't know where the relevant knowledge was stored, and even whether the knowledge was recorded. Therefore, he had to capture Kimura Kazuhiko alive and get specific information from him. Because of this, he didn't use any ruthless hands. But this also gave the opponent time to react. Sensing the danger, Kimura Kazuhiko didn't hesitate at all, and immediately grabbed the scalpel next to him, relying on his keen perception to block the attack from Qingming. Ding! A crisp metal collision sound rang out. The longsword and the scalpel collided, and the huge force came, causing Kimura Kazuhiko to stagger and fall to the side. At this time, Qingming's shadow clone moved, and in just a moment, he came to the direction where Kimura Kazuhiko fell. Then, he stretched out his hands. Snap! The shadow clone grabbed Kimura Kazuhiko's arm. The next moment, a strong suction force came out from his palm. Kimura Kazuhiko felt that the chakra in his body was like a flood that broke through the dam, rushing to his arm and then flowing out. "Damn it!" Kimura Kazuhiko cursed inwardly. Then, his face turned fierce, and a layer of wind-escape chakra appeared on the scalpel in his right hand, and then he swung it towards his left arm. The next moment, his left arm was broken. Then, his body seemed to have no bones, and he dodged the attack of Qingming's body at an incredible angle. Software transformation. Seeing this scene, Qingming narrowed his eyes slightly. The next moment, a violent power emanated from him, causing Kimura Kazuhiko, who was about to escape, to stagnate. It was at this moment that the shadow clone seized the opportunity and directly fired a Rasengan and pressed it on him. A painful roar came from Kimura Kazuhiko's mouth, causing the experimental subjects in the surrounding prisons to look over. Qingming ignored these half-dead guys and came in front of them with a flash sword technique. Then, at the moment when the two looked at each other, he performed the illusion, Sharingan. Kimura Kazuhiko was unable to resist and his consciousness gradually sank. So far, Kimura Kazuhiko was successfully controlled by him. After all, the other party was just a researcher. Maybe his perception ability was stronger than that of ordinary ninjas, and he had undergone some modifications, but compared with Qingming, it was still far behind. So it was normal that he couldn't escape. Looking at Kimura Kazuhiko, who had fallen into the illusion, Qingming didn't rush to look through his memory, but ordered the shadow clone beside him, "Go and deal with the restless factors in this base." From Kai's memory, he knew that the experimental subjects he had killed along the way were not all. Now that Kimura Kazuhiko has been controlled by him, he doesn't have to worry about anything. So, it's time to deal with those restless factors. Yes, after hearing Qingming's order, the shadow clone nodded without any nonsense, responded simply, and left in an instant. After it left, Qingming turned his attention back to Kimura Kazuhiko in front of him. Next, it was time to check the harvest. Chapter 480, Harvest and Departure. Ghost World Island. Underground Base. In Kimura Kazuhiko's room, Qingming put down a book in his hand, frowned, and fell into deep thought. Time passed by minute. After a long time, his brows gradually relaxed. Reopening the book, Qingming looked at the content on it and muttered, "Sure enough, any knowledge cannot be learned overnight." At this time, nearly 3 hours had passed since he successfully sneaked into the base. During this time, the shadow clone solved all the unstable factors, and he also learned what he wanted from Kimura Kazuhiko. Fortunately, Kimura Kazuhiko has the habit of recording experimental data. In this way, plus some books he usually studies, it is enough for him to summarize the relevant knowledge of human body modification that he needs. Therefore, Qingming does not need to keep the other party and find a way to obtain knowledge from his brain. With this thought, Qingming glanced at the corner of the room. It can be seen that there is still a person lying there. It is none other than Kimura Kazuhiko. Without any hesitation, Qingming stepped forward, performed the chakra absorption technique, and placed his hand on his chest. In a breath, he drained all of the opponent's chakra, followed by the spiritual energy and physical energy. As these energies were lost, his life quickly came to an end. Only after he completely lost his life did Qingming withdraw his palm. Feeling the chakra surge in his body, Qingming nodded with satisfaction. Then, he raised his hand to form a seal and performed the ninjutsu, fire style, Sashoku. Bang! A ball of flame appeared on Kimura Kazuhiko's body, then burned rapidly, and finally burned it completely to ashes. Qingming blew it gently and blew it away. After doing this, he began to pack up. Now it was already mid-afternoon, and he had to rush back before dark. In the evening, he had to go to Fiayu Town to perform routine reconnaissance and surveillance tasks, and he could not leave the Blackstone stronghold for too long. Time passed by every second. A few minutes later, Qingming piled all the things neatly together. Most of them were books and scrolls, only a few were tools and instruments needed for the experiment, and some medicines that might be used. Qingming looked at such a large pile of things and thought to himself, "Fortunately, I learned the sealing array and can make a sealing scroll, otherwise it would be a real hassle." Thinking of this, he took out a blank scroll and a brush, dipped it in ink, and began to write and draw. The so-called sealing technique actually expresses ninjutsu, illusion, sealing techniques and other similar things in the form of words. As long as you learn the corresponding conversion rules, basically everyone can make the corresponding scroll. However, these rules are not so easy to learn. Therefore, these scrolls with different functions are of high value. Only the sealing array that Qingming learned itself relies on being made into a scroll to function. After he got started, he naturally learned it. Otherwise, if he crammed at the last minute, he would not be sure. In a blink of an eye, 3 minutes passed. After Qingming's efforts, he finally successfully engraved the sealing array on the scroll. It can be seen that at this time, the scroll has changed from a useless blank state to a usable state covered with strange patterns. Qingming sighed lightly, gathered his mind, put down his pen and ink, and began to make seals. Because he had just started, he was not very fast in performing the sealing array, and it could even be said to be slow. He almost followed the process recorded on the scroll when he first learned it, and carried it out in a rigid manner. However, it was successful after all. As he injected a stream of chakra into the scroll, the sealing technique on it immediately became active and began to spread around. Almost in the blink of an eye, The pile of things he had sorted out next to him was covered by these crooked sealing techniques. Seeing this, Qingming changed his hand seal and shouted in a low voice, "Seal." The next moment, all the sealing techniques were retracted, as if something on the scroll was pulling them back into the scroll. Along with it, the pile of things that had just been covered disappeared, and in the center of the scroll, there was a big seal character. Success. Seeing the word seal, Qingming nodded with satisfaction. But then, he shook his head again. He nodded because he successfully made a scroll for sealing objects, which was considered a good skill, and shook his head because his skill was still a little rusty. If his skills were proficient enough, he could seal these things into any object in an instant, without having to depict any sealing techniques. He could even create a different space to seal them out of thin air. Unfortunately, these things were very far away from him. "Hey, take your time," Qingming muttered with a sigh. As the saying goes, you can't eat hot tofu in a hurry. With a proficiency panel, he only needs to practice step by step, and he can achieve this step sooner or later. As for now, there is no need to rush. After collecting the scroll on the ground, Qingming came outside. It can be seen that in the corridor outside the house, some shadow clones are practicing on their own. Obviously, he had not wasted any time in the past 3 hours. Glancing at these shadow clones, Qingming secretly calculated and found that the time for this round of training was just right, so he simply lifted the shadow clone technique. Bang! With the explosion of chakra smoke, all the shadow clones in the field disappeared on the spot. At the same time, a large amount of chakra was added to Qingming's body, and some more training experience and memories were added to his mind. Qingming stood there, closed his eyes, carefully reviewed these experiences and memories, and then digested them and turned them into the proficiency behind each skill on the panel. After a full quarter of an hour, Qingming opened his eyes. He glanced at the panel and found that the level of any skill had not been upgraded, even the fire style, unburned scorch technique with the lowest proficiency. Qingming did not have any extra chakra to allocate to it for the time being, so its level remained at the entry level. Shaking his head, Qingming no longer thought about it, and after closing the panel, he jumped towards the entrance of the base. It was both the entrance and the exit. If he wanted to leave here, he had to pass through there. Because the restless factors in the base had been dealt with by the shadow clone, he did not need to be as cautious as when he came. Therefore, it only took him 5 or 6 minutes to reach the underground pool. After taking a last look at the base, Qingming muttered, "It should be about time." Chapter 481 Return. Boom! As soon as Qingming finished speaking, a dull explosion sounded from deep inside the base. Listening carefully to the sound, it sounded a bit like the sound of a detonating talisman exploding. Qingming did not hesitate at all, and immediately rushed into the pool, swam through the underwater passage, returned to the cliff, and finally walked out of the deep cave. And just as he left the cave, a slight shaking came from under his feet, as if the entire Ghost Realm Island was shaking. Indistinctly, you can still hear continuous explosions coming from underground, as if there are continuous explosions deep underground. In fact, this is indeed the case. Before leaving the underground base, Qingming used the detonating talisman stored inside to set up a delayed explosion device. The vibration just now was caused by those explosions, and his goal is to destroy this underground base. Admittedly, he is now a member of Konoha, but he does not want to see Konoha do anything to win. No, that can no longer be considered unscrupulous. Using living people to conduct such experiments is simply taking human life lightly. As the saying goes, if you are rich, you should help the world. If you are poor, you should take care of yourself. Although he traveled to this world where human life is worthless, the 3 views he developed in his previous life still prevented him from being assimilated by this world. Therefore, if possible, he still hopes to change some things. It would be fine if he didn't see it, but since he saw it, he naturally couldn't let this tragedy continue until more than 10 years later. What's more, they did these researches not all for the victory of the war. In this case, Qingming would be even more unlikely to let it go. So, he chose to destroy the base. As for the people in the base, in addition to those restless factors that had long been solved by the shadow clones, there were only some half-dead experimental subjects left. After Qingming consulted these people, he gave them a quick death. As for those who have not yet undergone transformation, unfortunately, they were just used up by Kimura Kazuhiko today. When he first met him, he asked him to capture some more tomorrow. Unfortunately, the other party will not see this day. After all, He has been crushed to ashes. Suspended in the air, Qingming looked down at the entire island. After feeling the vibrations slowly stopping inside, he shook his head and flew straight into the distance. In a flash, more than 2 hours passed. Seeing that night was about to fall, Qingming finally returned to the Blackstone stronghold. He rested for a while, and then rushed to the headquarters. After learning from there about the observation results of the stronghold reconnaissance team on Fiyu Town during the day, he left the Blackstone stronghold again. Without wasting time, he flew straight to the direction of Fiyu Town. A quarter of an hour later, he arrived at his destination. Circling in the sky, he roughly observed and confirmed that the mist ninja in Fiyu Town had no intention of sending troops, so he left a shadow clone to continue monitoring. His original body rushed to the reef beach where he usually practiced. At this time, night had fallen. Qingming swallowed a few ration pills, filled his stomach, and began to separate his shadow clones to practice. However, unlike in the past, he also separated another shadow clone this time. He ordered him to study the books and scrolls left by Kimura Kazuhiko, and try to summarize the relevant technologies he needs from them as soon as possible. By then, he can start to transplant the Byakugan. With it, he will make up for his shortcomings in reconnaissance. As for why he didn't use his original body for research, it was simple. His original body still needed to practice the palm immortal technique and reflection heart technique. These two, one is related to the growth of his physique attribute, and the other is related to the evolution of his Sharingan, both of which are top priorities. It is true that the existence of the Byakugan will enhance his detection ability, but compared with these two, it is still a little less interesting. Qingming can still tell which is more important. What's more, it's just learning knowledge, and it doesn't make much difference whether it is the original body or not. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and Qingming didn't think about it anymore. After letting a few shadow clones leave, he entered the state of cultivation. At the same time, Konoha, the headquarters base of the route. Danzo looked at the information in his hand, and his already sinister face became even more sinister. He looked at his subordinate who was half kneeling on the ground in front of him and asked calmly, what exactly is going on in the Ghost World Island? Although his voice was calm, it revealed a chill that was hard to ignore. Even the root ninja below, who had no self-concept, shuddered when he heard this voice. He suppressed the discomfort in his heart and replied, Your Excellency, the specific situation is not clear yet. The news came from Snake Fang's summoned beast. According to it, Snake Fang and its blood contracts suddenly disappeared this afternoon. It suspected that Snake Fang was dead, so it informed us of this situation. After we got the news, we immediately contacted them, but there was no result. The so-called Snake Fang is actually Kimura Kazuhiko's code name in the route. His summoned beast is a fox that he personally transformed and is extremely smart. It is for this reason that he took the initiative to inform the root of the relevant information at the moment when the summoning contract between the two parties disappeared. At this time, Qingming didn't know that Kimura Kazuhiko had not done nothing before his death. He had secretly terminated the contract with his summoned beasts. It was this negligence that caused the root to learn about the loss of contact with the Onigashima base earlier than Qingming expected. However, it didn't have much impact, because Qingming had already dealt with what needed to be dealt with, and he was not afraid of being found out. Here, Danzo was obviously not satisfied with his subordinate's explanation. He snorted coldly and continued to ask, where are Shinobi and aka? Snake Fang lost contact, what are they doing? Hearing this, the root ninja below hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, Your Excellency, they have also lost contact. Hearing this news, Danzo laughed instead of getting angry. After a long while, he said, Good, very good. Someone actually set their sights on me. They are really courting death. Hearing this, the root ninja below immediately raised his head and said in doubt, Sir, do you mean, humph? Before he could finish his words, Danzo snorted coldly and interrupted him. Then he explained, It is no accident that no news from Shinobi and aka was sent back. It must be a premeditated action. At this point, he looked at the root ninja below and said, Feng, you must immediately mobilize people and investigate this matter. I want to see what is going on here. Yes, Danzo. Hearing this, the root ninja codenamed Feng responded immediately without any nonsense. After that, he left. Danzo looked at his departing back, leaned back on the chair, his eyes half open and half closed, and he didn't know what he was thinking. On the other hand, Qingming didn't know that his sudden action without any clues had made Danzo completely misunderstand the direction of the investigation. However, the location of the base on the Ghost World Island was already secret. If he hadn't traveled through time and knew a lot of information in advance, it would have been impossible to find it. In other words, according to normal logic, people who knew about that place must have conducted a very careful investigation. In this case, it was normal for Danzo to think that someone was targeting him. In this regard, Qingming could only say, "I wish him good luck." Chapter 482. 2 days later. In a flash, 2 days passed. It has been 3 days since the last attack of the Mist Ninja in Fiayu Town. And until today, they have not taken action again. I wonder if there will be any changes today. Thinking of the abnormalities of the Mist Ninja in Fiayu Town last night, Qingming thought so in his heart. And just as he was thinking so, a knock on the door suddenly sounded. Qingming's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he thought to himself, "I guess I guessed it right." Thinking of this, Qingming quickly picked up the towel beside him and wiped the water stains on his face. He came to the door and opened it. He saw a familiar figure standing outside. It was none other than SYNOPSIS' messenger Chunin, Naruto Ichiro. It must be said that the opponent's luck is really good. After several battles in a row, he is still alive, and Qingming swept the opponent with the Sharingan and could faintly feel that the opponent's strength had improved slightly. Being looked at by Qingming, Ichiro Naruto felt a little uncomfortable. He shrank back and said, "Qingming, the captain asked you to go to the meeting room immediately." This familiar opening line reminded Qingming of the scene before the Mist Ninja attacked last time. The other party seemed to have said the same thing. So he asked, "What's the matter? Are the Mist Ninjas attacking again?" Although his last sentence was a little teasing, he was really asking. Hearing his question, Ichiro Naruto nodded seriously and said, "Yes." Then, he looked around again, and after confirming that there was no one, he continued, "Didn't you report this morning that there was an unusual movement of the Mist Ninjas in Fiayu Town last night? Earlier today, Captain Sano sent people to scout, and now it has been basically confirmed that the Mist Ninjas are preparing to attack again." "Oh, is that so?" Qingming heard this, groaned, then waved his hand and said, "Okay, I already know. You go and notify the others." "Yeah." Seeing this, Ichiro Naruto said no more, responded, and turned away. Looking at his departing figure, Qingming thought for a while at the door before returning to the house. Just now, he had just woken up from his dream, and now he had not packed his equipment or anything. Although he was only going to a meeting, he was used to being fully prepared. Based on his current position in the base, after the meeting, the possibility that SYNOPSIS would send him out for reconnaissance was at least 90%, if not 100%. At that time, he didn't want to come back again. A few minutes later, everything was ready. Qingming was fully armed, locked the door, and rushed to the meeting room. Needless to say, the content of the meeting was still the same old routine, just talking about the current situation, then asking for everyone's opinions, and finally starting to assign tasks. The only thing worth noting is that according to the news sent back by the reconnaissance team in front, the Mist Ninjas in Fiayu Town did not seem to plan to act together this time, but dispersed into small teams. The purpose of such tactics is obviously very clear, that is, to harass them. In this case, they have similar forces, and there is no better way except to respond with the same tactics. From this, it can be imagined that this will be a long battle, and perhaps the sound of fighting can be heard 24 hours a day. However, this is not a bad thing. Since the other party has chosen this tactic, it means that they have basically given up the plan to capture the Blackstone stronghold. In this way, they don't have to worry too much about the loss of the stronghold. In addition, fighting nearby is their home ground, and supplies are bound to be easier than the other side. The combat power that their ninjas can exert will also be stronger than that of the other side. And this is undoubtedly good news. Therefore, when assigning tasks, the expressions on everyone's faces were not too serious. When it was Qingming's turn, as he guessed, the task of scouting the movements of the Mist Ninja was once again handed over to him. However, this time he didn't need to do anything more, just report the general movements of the Mist Ninja to the headquarters truthfully. After the meeting, Qingming walked out of the headquarters, without staying too long, and performed the wind style, wind wings on the spot, flew high into the sky, and flew to the south of the stronghold. That's right. According to the intelligence sent back by the frontline reconnaissance team, the Mist Ninjas did not take the sea route this time, but all took the land route. The location of Fiayu Town happened to be just south of Hishi Town, so they just needed to fly in this direction. A few minutes later, Qingming arrived above the valley where Shinobuhisa had ambushed Yasuda Akaja and others. At this time, there were dozens of mist ninja teams passing through it. It can be seen that they were all very cautious. Obviously, the ambush of Shinobuhisa last time left them with a great psychological shadow. Unfortunately, their caution was destined to be in vain. At the meeting just now, Shinobuhisa had decided to place the battlefield around the Hishi stronghold and make the most of the advantage of fighting at home. Therefore, there was no ambush at all on the way from Fiayu Town to Hishi Town. Time passed by minute. Soon, the mist ninjas found his trace. Unfortunately, he flew too high, and the other party had no way to deal with it. They could only be vigilant of his approach while continuing to move forward. As for being discovered by Qingming, it doesn't matter at all. A long time ago, both sides had been playing an open game. As long as they were not ambushed, their whereabouts were fine. Qingming, after following the other party for a few minutes, felt quite bored. So he landed far away. Then, he used the shadow clone technique to create a shadow clone to continue the reconnaissance and surveillance missions. He went to practice. It is worth mentioning that after practicing for 2 days or nearly 3 days, his Earth Escape hardening technique was upgraded to a higher level, from LV4 to LV5. And LV5 is undoubtedly the beginning of a qualitative change. Now, he can already perform this technique in a very short time. In other words, it can be used in more intense battles. And this has greatly improved his safety. However, if you want to upgrade from LV5 to LV6, you need 5,000 proficiency points. Even with his current progress, it will take more than a week. This time, in Qingming's opinion, is a little long. So, he thought about it and decided to use 20,000 of the 70,000 chakra points allocated to the Earth style hardening technique to improve the fire style Sushin technique. This will allow him to gain 200 points of proficiency every day, and he can be promoted to level 2 in just 1 day, and to level 3 in another 5 days. When he reaches level 3, he can be used in less intense battles, rather than just destroying corpses and erasing traces. There are also water style, water array wall and water style, water dragon bullets technique. After these days of practice, they will soon be promoted. Now, their level is level 6, and the next level will be level 7, which is their limit. By then, these two ninjutsu will be able to save him a full 40,000 chakra points. The only pity is that he has already arranged these chakras, and there is no way to use them to improve the earth style, hardening technique and fire style, Sushin technique. However, there is a way to speed up. Qingming looked at the Mist Ninja team from a distance. These are all excellent resources. Chapter 483 Well prepared. In a flash, nearly 2 hours passed. The Mist Ninja of Fiayu Town finally arrived at the outskirts of the Blackstone stronghold. After that, the two sides did not waste time and immediately started a war. However, unlike the last war, the battlefield was only a few kilometers in radius, and it was mainly distributed in an area east of the Blackstone stronghold. This time, the battlefield of both sides was spread over a radius of more than 10 kilometers, almost covering the 4 directions of the entire Blackstone stronghold, namely the southeast, northwest and northeast. From noon until the evening, the sound of the battle never stopped, and there were sounds of detonating tags and ninjutsu explosions everywhere. From time to time, there were Konoha teams in the Blackstone stronghold. They were either going out for support or coming back to rest. In short, they were busy. At this moment, the advantage of being the home field was fully revealed. Compared with them, the situation of the Mist Ninja was much worse. Although they had tried their best to move the battlefield outward, they were still not as good as Konoha in terms of logistics and supplies. After all, the initiative of whether to engage in battle was on Konoha's side. If the distance was too far, they could completely choose to avoid the battle. In this way, Kirigakure cannot extend the battlefield too far. Therefore, they have to fight against them despite the continuous supply and support from Konoha. Both sides fight each other in the form of teams. Each ninja can maximize his subjective initiative and narrow the gap with combat experience and wisdom. Otherwise, the casualties of Kirigakure will definitely be large. It must be said that in terms of individual quality, the ninjas from the Blood Mist village are indeed stronger than those of Konoha. Even with all kinds of unfavorable conditions, they still achieved a nearly 1:1 casualty ratio, Night. Blackstone Stronghold. In the meeting room, Qingming looked at the battle report in his hand without any change in his expression. Looking at other people, most of them were the same. This is not because they are indifferent, but after more than 2 years of war, they have become accustomed to life and death. To put it bluntly, some middle and low-level ninjas are just dead, and they can be replaced in a few years after the war. There is no need to care too much. That's right, today, the ninjas who died during the day were basically mid-level and low-level ninjas. This is the difference between small-scale battles and large-scale melees. During large-scale melees, even the Jonins like them cannot evacuate the battlefield at will without orders from the top. Therefore, sometimes they have to fight for their lives. In squad-scale battles, they have extremely high autonomy and can evacuate first when they see that the situation is not good. In this way, as long as they are not besieged and the strength difference is not big, there is not much danger to their lives. It is precisely for this reason that after a day, the number of Jonins who died was very few, and those who unfortunately died were all special Jonins with weaker strength. Moreover, it is foreseeable that as long as Kirigakure does not launch a decisive battle, the casualties of these Jonins will not increase rapidly. The meeting room was silent, with only the occasional sound of papers being turned. After a long time, Senno Nobuhisa coughed lightly, attracting everyone's attention. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he spoke. You have also seen today's battle report. Although the results are not bad, the casualties of each team are not small. Everyone heard this. No one said anything, just quietly waiting for his next words. Sure enough, Senno Nobuhisa continued, what do you think about us reducing the scope of the battlefield tomorrow? Reduce the battlefield? Everyone thought in their hearts. There is no doubt that this is a good way to reduce casualties. Because reducing the battlefield means that it is closer to the stronghold. In this way, whether it is transporting supplies or launching rescue, it will be faster. On the battlefield, life and death often take a moment. If the rescue is faster, it will be shared by everyone, and the safety will be improved. In general, it will definitely reduce the casualty rate of the middle and lower ninjas. However, this is not a good thing for them, the upper ninjas. Because the reduction of the battlefield also means an increase in the density of the enemy. Correspondingly, the probability of them encountering the enemy's upper ninjas will also increase. At that time, if they are defeated and want to escape, the risk will undoubtedly increase. However, this risk is still acceptable. Therefore, after some discussion, everyone agreed to this proposal. Seeing everyone nod, Senno Nobuhisa breathed a sigh of relief. As a commanding talent from a civilian background, Senno Nobuhisa actually does not have much say in the Blackstone base. It is for this reason that he would hold a meeting before doing anything in order to balance the interests of all parties. Fortunately, none of the Jonin present this time opposed his proposal. In this way, those mid-level and low-level ninjas can live longer. After calming down, Senno Nobuhisa stopped thinking about it and began to arrange the night's duty and the division of defense zones for tomorrow. The meeting ended an hour later. Just when Qingming was about to leave the meeting room, Senno Nobuhisa suddenly called him, Qingming Jonin. Wait a minute. Qingming heard this, paused slightly, turned around and looked at the other party, puzzled. Is there anything else, Captain Senno? It's like this. Senno Nobuhisa didn't waste any words and immediately said everything he wanted to say. It turned out that after today's battle, there were too many wounded in the base, and some medical ninjas were not enough, so he wanted him to help treat some of the wounded. Hearing this, Qingming frowned slightly. It is true that with the supplement of the Mist Ninja on the battlefield, he is not short of chakra for the time being, but even so, every bit of chakra is very precious to him. What's more, he has made arrangements for these chakras, and now suddenly using them to treat the wounded will undoubtedly disrupt his plan. However, Qingming thought about it and finally agreed. It's not that he is soft-hearted and can't listen to other people's requests, but considering that he will have to perform surgery on himself in the future to transplant the white eye. If he can have the chance to practice before that, it will undoubtedly increase the success rate of his surgery again. Of course, this does not mean that he wants to use these wounded for experiments. He is not so crazy yet. As the saying goes, don't do to others what you don't want others to do to you. Since he can't stand the behavior of Kimura Kazuhiko and others, he can't repeat the same mistakes, otherwise it would be double standards. All he wanted to do was to observe their physical changes in the process of treating them, and enrich his relevant knowledge from the side. At the same time, treating these wounded people can also increase his proficiency in several medical ninjutsu, Perhaps these proficiency cannot make them rise to the next level, but every increase in proficiency is a new feeling for him. And when it comes to operating on oneself, the more proficient the means, the better. So, after some consideration, Qingming agreed to SYNOPSIS' request. After seeing Qingming's agreement, SYNOPSIS also showed a smile on his face. Then, Qingming said goodbye to the other party and went straight to the hospital. In this way, in the next few days, Qingming practiced and fought during the day, and helped treat the wounded at night. Don't be too full of life. During this period, he separated a shadow clone and studied the books and scrolls left by Kimura Kazuhiko day and night. Finally, after an in-depth study, he combined the medical ninjutsu he mastered and developed a set of human body transformation technology. It does not involve other things, just adding an extra visual system to people. And this is the basis for his transplant of the white eyes. Chapter 484, Transformation begins. A week later. After 7 consecutive days of fighting, both Konoha and Kirigakure were inevitably exhausted. Therefore, both sides tacitly chose to temporarily cease fire. Walking out of the conference room, Qingming looked at the deserted stronghold and said to himself, sure enough, the closer the war is to the end, the more tragic it will be. From a god's perspective, he knew that the Third Ninja World War was about to end. But from the experience of the past 2 months, the battle on the front line has obviously become more intense. Apart from anything else, in this stronghold alone, the number of casualties in the past 7 days has reached 2/3 of the total number of people. Only the ninja world has unreasonable healing methods such as medical ninjutsu, otherwise at least half of these 2/3 of the people would have died. But even so, in 7 days, the loss of nearly 1/3 of the personnel is also a huge loss. This is just a point where Kirigakure fainted and attacked. It can be imagined how fierce the battle was when the southern defense line was attacked by the main attack. I'm afraid people are dying there every moment. Shaking his head, Qingming stopped thinking about it. Now his strength has not reached the level of being invincible. There is nothing he can do except to continue to hide. Maybe when he can play with his planet at will, he will transform it according to his own wishes. I just don't know if he will have the leisure to do so at that time. In a state of random thoughts, Qingming returned to his room. Sitting on the bed, he closed his eyes and began to carefully recall the visual system transformation technology he had summarized during this period. Time passed by minute. About an hour later, Qingming opened his eyes again. Then, without hesitation, he immediately packed up his things and left the house after getting ready. This time, he did not fly away in a high-profile manner, but carefully avoided the patrol team of Konoha and left the base quietly. After that, he sneaked all the way, avoided the Mist Ninja team wandering outside the base, and continued to walk to the west of the base. That's right, there are still Mist Ninjas outside the base. Although they chose to temporarily cease fire, they did not leave, but stationed not far from the Blackstone stronghold, ready to launch the next attack at any time. However, he did not come out this time to cause trouble for them, but to find a more secluded place to complete the transformation of his visual system. There happened to be no battle today, which was a good opportunity that Qingming did not want to miss. After walking for more than half an hour, he left the battlefield. After that, Qingming did not hesitate at all and immediately performed the wind-style, wind wings, instantly increasing his speed to the limit, and flew to the heart of the fire country at a speed of 100 meters per second. Although the transformation operation would not take long, it was still necessary to be cautious. Compared with other places, it was still safer in the fire country for the time being. So, he flew here. Time passed like water. Qingming walked and stopped, and finally found a place that was quite satisfactory near noon. This was an empty cave, which looked sparse and ordinary on the outside, but when you walked further in, you would find that there was actually another world inside. Qingming stood in the middle of a hall, looking at the broken doors around him, his eyes full of joy. That's right, this is not a natural cave or something like that, but an underground space that has been artificially transformed. From the decaying things in the surrounding rooms, it can be seen that this is most likely a material storage point prepared in advance by a certain force in order to deal with the war. As for the time, it has been at least several decades. In other words, this place has existed before the establishment of Konoha. And no one has come here for such a long time. It is likely that no one knows this place. He was able to find this place thanks to the giant bear hiding in the cave. If he hadn't taken a fancy to the other party's nest, he would not have been able to find this place. In this way, it is almost impossible for others to find this place. And such an underground space, Qingming can not only use it for this operation, but also as a secret base in the future, which can be said to kill two birds with one stone. Not bad, this is it, Qingming muttered and made up his mind in an instant. Since it has been decided to perform the operation here, the necessary cleaning is still necessary. With this thought, Qingming walked straight to the corner of the hall, raised his hand to seal, and performed the ninjutsu, wind style, great breakthrough in the direction of the exit. In an instant, a gust of wind blew out of his mouth, sweeping the entire underground hall, carrying the garbage and dust, and blowing towards the exit of the base. After a few breaths, the gust of wind stopped. Qingming put down his right hand from his mouth, looked at the spotless hall, and nodded with satisfaction. However, when he saw the scene in the surrounding rooms, his brows frowned again. His convenient approach naturally made it impossible to clean the inside of the room. In fact, the inside became even dirtier and messier because of the invasion of garbage and dust carried by the gust of wind. However, Qingming didn't have the mind to care about these now. After confirming that the hall was clean, he planned to perform the operation. After glancing around, he didn't see anything like tables and chairs, so Qingming simply stepped on the ground, and the earth-style chakra poured into it, and suddenly a stone operating table rose in front of him. This is not a ninjutsu, it's just using the earth-style chakra to reshape the rock. After doing all this, he raised his hands again, crossed them to form the character seal, and performed the shadow clone technique. Bang! With a cloud of chakra smoke dispersing, two shadow clones appeared in front of him. Qingming said to one of them, "The task of guarding is left to you." "Yes," the shadow clone nodded without any nonsense, and left the underground hall. Then, Qingming looked at the other shadow clone, took out two scrolls from the ninja tool bag and handed them to the other party, while saying, "The surgery is left to you." "Yes," the shadow clone also did not waste time, and after a simple response, he took the scroll from Qingming's hand. He raised his hand to form a seal, first opened one of them, took out a complete set of surgical tools from it, and then opened another one. Suddenly, a medicine bottle filled with green solution appeared in the center of the scroll. Looking closely, you can also see a vibrant eye in the light green solution. This is exactly the white eye he got from Qing. Next, the shadow clone will transplant it to his body, so that he can master the ability of the Byakugan through another set of visual systems. Qingming watched the shadow clone prepare everything in an orderly manner, and consciously lay on the stone operating table. After a while, the operation officially began. Chapter 485 completed. Are you ready? I'm going to start. The shadow clone looked at Qingming lying on the stone operating table and asked. Hearing this, Qingming nodded, then looked up and swallowed a handful of pills. These are called medicines, but in fact they are more like toxins. They are drugs that Qingming configured according to his own constitution, a drug that can suppress his body's self-healing ability. Nowadays, his constitution attribute is as high as 19 points, and his self-healing ability is far beyond the reach of ordinary people. This is a good thing in normal times, but it is not a good thing now. After all, surgery always requires cutting open his body. If the middle heals, it will be a big trouble. Therefore, such a toxin that can suppress his body's self-healing ability is very critical. Fortunately, there are many principles for the configuration of drugs in the books and scrolls left by Kimura Kazuhiko. Otherwise, he alone may not be able to research such a drug in such a short time. Of course, things created in such a short time naturally cannot be perfect in all aspects, and side effects are inevitable. However, Qingming possesses the pupil technique of heavenly control, and the side effects are not within his consideration. Because he can completely remove the side effects of these drugs according to his own wishes after the operation. This is the second ability of heavenly control. That is, through operations similar to restarting and rewinding, a specific negative state can be removed. Therefore, he can ignore the side effects that are not immediately effective. Feeling the rapidly declining vitality in his body, Qingming's face turned pale. After waiting for a moment, he nodded to the shadow clone again and said, "Let's start." "Okay." Hearing this, the shadow clone did not say anything nonsense. After a simple response, he raised his hand to seal and performed the chakra scalpel. A faint green light wrapped around his right hand, and then it used this hand to cut off part of his pain nerves. That's right, it's not enough to just suppress the body's self-healing, he also has to cut off his own pain. Qingming doesn't think he has the courage to scrape the bone to treat the poison, so some preparation is necessary. As for giving him anesthesia or knocking him out, not to mention whether this would affect the existence of the shadow clone, the transformation process alone would require him to take action many times. In this case, he naturally could not lose consciousness or mobility. Therefore, cutting off the pain nerves was the simplest way. Swish, swish, swish. As the shadow clone slashed a few times, Qingming felt that some nerves on his face had lost their function. Not only did his expression become extremely strange, but even some subtle touches were gone. Despite this, the shadow clone still did not stop, until it completely cut off all the pain nerves from his neck upwards, and then began the next step. Then, he took a scalpel and skillfully cut open the flesh and blood between his eyebrows and a large piece of face nearby. It must be said that this scene was extremely terrifying. The key is that Qingming kept his eyes open from beginning to end, which was even more terrifying. The shadow clone did not stop moving. After completing this step, he changed to a smaller scalpel and continued to cut along the muscle texture, and soon touched his skull. At this time, the shadow clone suddenly injected a very weak wind chakra into the scalpel, making its sharpness suddenly rise by several levels. Then, with a light stroke, it cut open his most solid forehead bone, revealing the brain inside. At this time, even though the pain nerves had been cut off, the keen mental perception still made Qingming feel quite painful. However, more than 2 years of life and death struggles were not covered up, so he endured the pain. The shadow clone's face remained unchanged, and he continued the action in his hands. He gently separated his diencephalon and midbrain, revealing the third ventricle inside. And at the top of this third ventricle, there is a gray-red ellipsoidal body about 7 mm long and 4 mm wide. This is not something else, but the most mysterious pineal gland in the human body. The visual system transformation technology developed by Qingming is based on it, adding an additional visual system to the human body. The reason for choosing this place is that he plans to transplant the white eyes to the center of the eyebrows, which is the most suitable place. Secondly, the pineal gland is full of neural networks and blood vessels. With a little catalysis and guidance, he can create an additional visual nerve. Just like now, the shadow clone raised his hand to form a seal, and performed the palm immortal technique, condensing a group of yang escape chakra, and began to stimulate the vitality of his pineal gland. At the same time, Qingming suddenly opened the Mangekyou Sharingan, and a blood tear flowed from his right eye. The ability of human control was instantly activated by him. Suddenly, an invisible force acted on his body, and then began to guide the pineal gland to evolve according to his wishes. The most fundamental ability of human control is only one, that is, to control oneself, that is, to control everything about oneself. Anything that he thinks belongs to the concept of himself can be affected by it. At first, when the Mangekyou Sharingan was just awakened, it could only affect the level of organs. Moreover, the degree of influence was not very deep. At most it would control the heartbeat, or enhance the digestive ability of the stomach, and so on. However, as the evolution of his Mangekyou Sharingan continued to increase, the depth of its influence was also increasing, and the microscopic level was also improving. For this reason, this ability was used by him to assist the evolution of his body. And now, it can be used to catalyze the differentiation and growth of the nervous system. In this way, the human control is responsible for controlling the direction, and the shadow clone is responsible for injecting vitality. The two work together to achieve the establishment of a second visual system. However, just in case, and in order to give the Mangekyou Sharingan some time to rest, he would stop from time to time and let the shadow clone check if there was any problem with the growth of the visual nerve. At the same time, he would also use surgical methods to connect these nervous systems to various parts of the brain. In this way, time passed by minute. After a full hour, Qingming finally completed the catalysis of the visual nerve. After closing the Sharingan again, Qingming focused his attention on the front. Suddenly, he felt that everything in front of him seemed to be covered with a veil, making it unclear. Obviously, his vision had declined greatly. After realizing this, Qingming's expression paused, but soon returned to normal. Indeed, the frequent use of the ability of human control this time has greatly affected his vision. However, it is all worth it. Not to mention that in at most 1 year, his Mangekyou Sharingan will be able to successfully evolve into the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. By then, the problem of decreased vision will naturally be solved. The gains this time alone are worth the price he paid. When other people carry out human body transformation, they will disrupt the human body system itself, and there will be some side effects to a greater or lesser extent. But he is different. Rather than transformation, this time, it is more like an evolution. Because the whole process is the original soup into the original food, based on his own body, using various means to guide and catalyze. There may be some problems at first, but as time goes by, it will only become more and more suitable for him. By then, through the guidance of human control, and after several evolutions with a body, it can basically be regarded as his original ability. In this way, Qingming can also look forward to whether this method will give him an extra bloodline. Theoretically, it is basically impossible to obtain the corresponding bloodline when transplanting foreign organs. After all, this is a change at the genetic level. Just like Kakashi, even if he obtains the Sharingan, he cannot obtain the bloodline of the Uchiha clan, and it is very difficult to use the Sharingan. But Qingming is different. His body originally has the bloodline of the Uchiha clan, and the Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan are fundamentally derived from the Otsutsuki clan. So, in theory, he also has the genes of the Hyuga clan in his body. In this way, by fusing the Byakugan, it may be possible to stimulate it. By then, he may obtain the bloodline of the Hyuga clan. By then, when he uses the Byakugan, not to mention comparing it to the original Hyuga clan, at least it should not be as difficult as Kakashi using the Sharingan. Of course, Qingming also knows that pursuing bloodline can indeed quickly improve strength, but when he reaches a higher level, it will inevitably become an obstacle for him to move forward. Therefore, he will not deliberately pursue the so-called bloodline of the Otsutsuki clan, but will jump out of this shackle as soon as possible and walk out of his own unique path. Only in this way can we talk about the future. While Qingming was daydreaming, the shadow clone beside him had completed the final examination and was ready to transplant his white eyes. At this point, the operation can almost be considered a success. Thanks to the book friend Hashayandi for the reward of 1,000 starting coins. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 486, Make Up for the Shortcomings. As Qingming expected, there were no problems in the subsequent surgery, and the transplantation of the Byakugan went very smoothly. About half an hour later, Qingming sat up from the stone operating table. He touched his forehead, where there was an eye, which seemed to have grown there originally, without any trace of transformation. It was so natural, mainly due to the effect of the extremely profound palm fairy technique he mastered. However, although there was nothing on the outside, Qingming still clearly felt a trace of disharmony inside. After thinking about it, Qingming suddenly opened the Mangekyo Sharingan, endured the soreness of his eyes, and stimulated the pupil technique of his left eye, Shian's Hityu. In an instant, an invisible force acted on him, making him leave this world. Taking this opportunity, Qingming stripped off the side effects of the inhibitor according to his own wishes. After a few breaths, when he reappeared on the operating table, his body's self-healing ability had begun to take effect. And it was this self-healing ability that made the disharmony between his eyebrows disappear quickly. This is the difference between medical ninjutsu and self-healing ability. No matter how profound the medical ninjutsu is, it is still an external means after all. Only the self-selection and evolution of life is the most suitable for oneself. Qingming waited quietly for a while, and only after the incoordination completely disappeared did he begin to try to test the ability of this eye. If this eye cannot be used, then even if the transplant is perfect, it will be useless. However, what makes Qingming feel relieved is that his eye is at least not like Kakashi, unable to be closed. As for Qing, it is the same. Otherwise, he would not have made a seal outside the eye. Of course, there is a consideration of protecting this eye, but it may not be without the purpose of sealing the ability of the Byakugan and reducing consumption. And what about Qingming? Even if he does nothing now, he does not consume too much chakra. It is really like an ordinary eye, growing there. Inhale, exhale, take a deep breath, and then exhale slowly. After his mood has calmed down, Qingming followed the guidance of instinct, raised his hand to concentrate chakra, and then activated the Byakugan between his eyebrows. Instantly, a special vision came into his mind. At this moment, everything around him seemed to be non-existent. and was easily penetrated by his sight. Then he could focus on a certain place according to his subjective consciousness. Just like now, he could clearly see that outside the cave, on a big tree, the shadow clone he sent out to perform the guard mission was standing there quietly. However, as he observed, the shadow clone seemed to have noticed something, and quickly looked around, with vigilance in his eyes. Unfortunately, he found nothing. Just as he was about to explore further, Qingming's voice suddenly appeared in his ears. "Don't be nervous, it's me." Hearing this familiar voice, the shadow clone was completely relieved. Underground hall. On the operating table, Qingming lifted the heart-to-heart technique and continued to test the ability of the white eyes. Time passed by minute. After about dozens of seconds, when Qingming felt a little sore in his eyes, he stopped observing, and then his white eyes closed automatically. There is no doubt that he succeeded. With this eye, he can clearly see everything within a radius of 1 kilometer. Not only that, because there is no bird in a cage restriction, his Byakugan does not have the 1-degree blind spot of vision behind the first thoracic vertebrae of other Hyuga branch ninjas. In this respect alone, it is perfect. The only slight shortcoming is that its consumption of chakra is more than he expected, which is obviously not the original one. In addition, he cannot open the Byakugan for a long time for the time being. I don't know if it is because it has just been transplanted and has not been running yet, or for some other reasons. In short, now he can only maintain observation for less than a minute at most, and he has to close the Byakugan again and let it rest for a while. Otherwise, his eyes will hurt and his consciousness will become dazed. These are all problems he needs to solve in the future. However, Qingming's intuition tells him that these are not big problems. It is inevitable that there will be problems of one kind or another when operating for the first time, but there will be no problems next time. It seems that he will not have the opportunity to operate for the second time. Shaking his head, Qingming stopped thinking about it and turned to open the proficiency panel. The next moment, a familiar light blue screen appeared. Name, Uchiha Qingming. Age, 12 years old. Constitution, 19 spirit, 20 chakra, 21,600, 109,172,117,364, bloodline, Sharingan, main Gekyo, 12880/50000, 14416/50000, Byakugan, unawakened, 15/100, skills, chakra refining technique, LV5, 2630, 5000, LV5, 2886, 5000, wind style, Rasenshrikan, LV7, 5920,000, LV7, 8,220,000, wind style, wind wings, LV5, 1/5000, LV5, 2350/5000, fire style, great dragon fire technique, LV5, 420, 5000, fire style, unburned scorch technique, LV3, 725/1000, water style, great shark bullet technique, LV5, 3200/5000, LV6, 1580/10000, earth style, hardening technique, LV5, 3500/5000, earth style, earth flow wall, LV1, 21/200, earth style, earth rising spear, LV1, 18/200, shadow clone technique, LV5, 1025/5000, LV5, 3100/5000, chakra absorption technique, LV6, 820/10000, LV6, 3500/10000, Rasengan, LV7, 7820,000, LV7, 12,120,000, heart opening technique, LV2, 20/500, LV4, 1340, 2000, palm of immortal technique, LV8, 28500/50000, LV8, 37,450,000, chakra scalpel, LV6, 4,510,000, LV6, 8,510,000, fine wound extraction technique, LV6, 110,000, LV6, 2,710,000, heart reflecting technique, LV8, 15299/50000, LV8, 18371/50000, Chakra Control, LV5, 4550/5000, LV6, 750/10000, Guardian Seal, LV2, 250/500, Sealing Array, LV2, 240/500, Perfect Skills, Instant Sword Technique, LV7, 0/0, Water Style, Water Array Wall, LV7, 0/0, Water Style, Water Dragon Bullet Technique, LV7, 0/0, Sweeping across the panel. Qingming was attracted by the Baiyan, not awakened, 15/100, on his bloodline column. There is no doubt that his idea was successful. Although he had expected this, he couldn't help but get excited when he saw that after the transplant of the Byakugan, he really showed signs of awakening his bloodline. Because this means that from now on, he can also improve the Byakugan like improving the Sharingan. Although the Byakugan's performance in the ninja world is average, its potential cannot be denied. As the eyes that the Otsutsuki clan is born with, it can also use a variety of abilities when it evolves to a high level. Qingming doesn't ask to develop any special abilities. He just needs to continuously strengthen his ability to see far and see through. Now, his Byakugan can only see things within 1 kilometer, and the power of perspective will also be affected by some chakra environments. If he could evolve this eye to ignore any obstacles and see clearly within a radius of 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, or even further, it would be of great help to him. And this would completely make up for his shortcomings in reconnaissance. As for the fact that the Byakugan itself cannot do this, sorry, with the existence of the proficiency panel and the man's defense, if he still cannot break the shackles of his own bloodline, then there is no need to talk about transcendence. However, how to fully awaken the bloodline in the body and how to improve the evolution of the Byakugan is a problem. After all, the foundation of the reflection of the heart technique was developed by the predecessors of the Uchiha clan with great effort specifically for the Sharingan. Now even if it has been changed beyond recognition by him, it cannot work on the Byakugan. Therefore, if you want to evolve the Byakugan, you have to think of another way. Chapter 487 Leaving. After thinking for a while, Qingming suddenly opened the Mangekyo Sharingan again. As a line of blood and tears slid down from his right eye, the power of human defense was activated again. Suddenly, an invisible force enveloped him, and then began to guide the Byakugan at the center of his eyebrows to merge into his body according to his wishes. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. After more than 20 seconds, he stopped the spell. Looking at the panel again, in the blood column, the awakening degree of the Byakugan was still 15 out of 100, without any change. Qingming was not discouraged. After a short rest, he activated the power of human defense again and continued to guide the Byakugan to merge into his body. Just like before, it lasted for about 20 seconds. After reaching the limit of what he could bear at one time, he closed the power of human defense again. On the panel, the awakening degree of the Byakugan still did not change. Qingming frowned slightly, but still did not say much. After waiting for a while, he felt his eyes were much more comfortable. He did the same thing and activated the power of human defense again, guiding the Byakugan to merge into his body. Just like that, again and again. About 5 minutes later, Qingming used the power of human defense 5 times to the maximum. On the panel, the awakening degree of the Byakugan finally increased a little, from 15 out of 100 to 16/100. Seeing this change, Qingming finally showed a smile on his face. As he expected, the power of human defense can indeed increase the awakening degree of the Byakugan. In this way, he has a guaranteed strategy. As for why it is a guaranteed strategy, it's very simple. According to the results of the test just now, if you want to use human defense to completely awaken the blood of the Byakugan in your body, you have to do it at least 425 times to the maximum. Of course, as his Mangekyo Sharingan evolves, the effect that can be achieved by a single spell and the duration of its maintenance will increase. But this cannot change the fact that he needs to use the Mangekyo Sharingan frequently. Qingming didn't want to go blind early, so he couldn't choose this method. What's more, after his Byakugan awakens, it needs to evolve continuously. He can continue to use the power of human control, right? In that case, even if he is strong, his eyes will not be able to bear it. Therefore, this can only be used as a backup, not as a reliance. Wait, suddenly, Qingming thought, If his Mangekyo Sharingan evolves into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, without the hidden danger of blindness, can it be used as a regular method? Qingming fell into deep thought, tapping the operating table with his fingers from time to time. After a long time, he finally came back to his senses. At the same time, a relieved smile appeared on his face. There was no other reason. After his in-depth thinking, he felt that this possibility was completely possible, and it could even be said to be very high. Moreover, he decided to do so. After all, his Sharingan can evolve continuously, which is a gift from his predecessors, but it is almost impossible for him to develop a special skill similar to the reflection of the heart technique from scratch to promote the evolution of the Byakugan. At least, it is impossible in the short term. In the long term, Qingming glanced at the evolution of his Mangekyo Sharingan, 14,416, 50,000. With his current progress, he can upgrade it to the level of the Eternal Eye in at most 1 year. Therefore, there is no need to waste that effort. What's more, although he has not awakened the bloodline of the Byakugan, it does not affect his use of the Byakugan, but it just cannot improve its effect. This has no big impact on him. As for the current Byakugan, it is enough for him to use. Therefore, after comprehensive consideration, Qingming decided to ignore the awakening of the Byakugan bloodline for the time being. Qingming breathed a sigh of relief and felt relaxed all over. The next step is to consider how to hide the eye between the eyebrows. Although his Byakugan can be turned on and off at will, it is still somewhat conspicuous even when it is turned off. And this is definitely not possible. After thinking about it, Qingming cast his eyes on the skill bar on the panel. He passed over the various skills that were improved to varying degrees above, and looked at the only two sealing techniques at the bottom of the panel: Guardian Seal and Sealing Array. Let's not talk about the latter, which is not very helpful for him to solve the problem, but the former should be able to hide his Byakugan. However, in the past period of time, because there was no need, he invested only 5,000 chakra points in it after stopping practicing the subtle extraction technique. Therefore, until now, his proficiency has barely reached LV2, 250 out of 500. And the LV2 level really makes him feel uneasy. After thinking about it, Qingming raised his hand and released the shadow clone technique. In an instant, the two shadow clones in the hall and outside the cave disappeared. Then, on this panel, the chakra points increased from just over 20,000 points to more than 80,000 points. Now, it is not even 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it is almost 5 hours before dark. At present, he can recover more than 12,000 points of chakra per hour, which is 60,000 points in 5 hours. 60,000 plus 80,000 is 140,000 points of chakra. Putting all these chakras into the practice of Guardian Seal can increase his proficiency by about 1,400 points. And these proficiency points are enough to upgrade this technique from LV2 to LV4. In this way, although it still has not reached the qualitative change of LV5, it has crossed the threshold of LV3 and is enough to hide from ordinary detection. As for being detected in detail by others, with his current strength and identity, there should be no one who is so blind. Of course, if there is such a person, Qingming does not mind turning them all into the nourishment for improving his skill. Well, let's do it. With a decision in his mind, Qingming no longer wastes time. He turned over and jumped off the operating table, then raised his hands, crossed them to form the character seal, and performed the shadow clone technique again. Bang! With a cloud of chakra smoke exploding, 4 shadow clones appeared in the field. Including Qingming's original body, there were 5 people. The 5 people looked at each other, and without Qingming's instructions, they each found a place and began to practice the Guardian Seal. In the hall, the 5 people practiced and thought at the same time. Every half an hour, Qingming would release the shadow clone technique, summarize the practice experience of each shadow clone, and convert it into proficiency. Then, on this basis, continue to practice. In this way, time passed by minute, until 5 hours later. Looking at the Guardian Seal that had just been promoted to level 4 on the panel, Qingming's tired face showed a smile. He closed his eyes and carefully digested the insights after the promotion. Then, without wasting time, he immediately raised his hand to form a seal and performed this technique on his forehead. In an instant, dense sealing techniques appeared, covering his face, surrounding the white eyes at his forehead, looking extremely terrifying. However, Qingming didn't care much. At a certain moment, his hand seal suddenly changed, and he uttered a low cry. Seal, The next moment, all the sealing techniques converged in the middle, merged into the Byakugan, and disappeared. And with it, the Byakugan at his brow also disappeared. Qingming stretched out his hand to summon a water mirror and observed his brow. There was only a mark similar to section left there. Seeing this, he took the Konoha forward protector beside him and tied it on his head. The last trace also disappeared. Then, Qingming nodded with satisfaction. Next, as long as no one conducted a detailed investigation on him, it would be basically impossible to discover the existence of this Byakugan. At this point, Qingming was completely relieved. He rested for a while in the place, and after recovering some chakra, he performed wind style, wind wings and flew high into the sky, flying towards the direction of the Blackstone stronghold. Chapter 488 Discovery. About an hour later. It was getting dark. Qingming finally returned to the vicinity of the Blackstone base. At this point, it would be inappropriate to fly again. Although he had completed the operation and no longer cared whether others would find out that he had secretly left the base, it was better to save some trouble. Moreover, there were many mist-hidden ninja teams wandering outside the base, and his chakra was at an absolute low level, so there was really no need to make trouble. However, Qingming didn't want to cause trouble, but it didn't mean that trouble wouldn't find him. Just as he was approaching the Blackstone base cautiously, a mist shinobi team suddenly stopped about a kilometer behind him. One of them squatted down, looked at the ninja dog next to him that was less than the height of his calf, and said, "Happy, did you find anything?" This ninja dog named Happy was the summoning beast of this mist-hidden ninja special ninja. It had a sense of smell far superior to that of ordinary dogs, and it could distinguish even the slightest smell in the air. At this time, it shrugged its nose, sniffed the surroundings carefully, and then raised its head and said, "Long, we may be in trouble." Its voice was low and serious, far from being as young as its size showed. And its words made the four people present a little nervous. Inuryu knew that Happy would not speak without a purpose, so he hurriedly asked, "What's going on?" Hearing this, Happy did not speak immediately, but sniffed the air around again, and then continued, "I smell a familiar smell." "Whose?" Inuryu asked. "Uchiha Qingming," Happy replied. "What? Ghost Sword Qingming, how is it possible?" Hearing Happy's answer, Inuryu hadn't said anything more, and the other three people in the team screamed out, and some even drew out their kunai, ready to deal with possible attacks at any time. It's not their fault that they are so nervous, but their strength does not allow them to be careless. Unlike Inuryu, a special Junin, they only have the strength of a Chunin, and with such strength, encountering Qingming is almost a face-to-face matter. This has been fully demonstrated in the battles of the past week. The key is that Qingming is not like other Konoha Junin, who disdains to attack them. As long as he encounters a Chunin like them, he will decisively attack. This makes them very nervous. In this regard, Qingming can only say, "Who made him lack chakra?" If not, how can he maintain the steady progress of various skills in the fierce battle? You know, when his instant sword technique and some other skills are promoted to the perfect state, if they are used again, they will only consume chakra, and will not increase any proficiency. In order to make up for his losses in battle, he can only hunt these Chunins with the highest cost effectiveness. In addition, treating the wounded also requires a lot of chakra, and this hole must also be filled by someone. And the Kurigakure Chunin is undoubtedly the best candidate. Because of this, these Kurigakure Chunins are very afraid when they mention him. However, at this moment, Happy said, "The other party's current state seems to be a little bit wrong. What's going on?" Inuryu's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he quickly asked, "What did you find?" While talking, he raised his head and secretly looked in the direction that Happy had just sniffed, as if he was looking for Qingming's trace. Seeing this, Happy said speechlessly, "Don't look for him, he's not in the sky." Hearing this, Inuryu retracted his gaze, and Happy continued, "My nose tells me that he is now in the forest ahead, and he seems to be preparing to return to the Blackstone base, in the forest." Hearing this, not to mention Inuryu, a special Jonin who is good at intelligence collection and analysis, even the other three mist-hidden ninjas found the problem. There is no other reason. In the past half-month, Qingming has been flying around every time he went out, so how could he be hiding his head and showing his tail like now? That's right, Qingming is not flying in the sky, in their opinion, hiding his head and showing his tail. Combined with the information that Happy said that his breath was weakened, the four people couldn't help but wonder if Qingming was injured while carrying out a mission, and now he had to return to the base. It must be said that people are always good at deceiving themselves, especially when it comes to their own interests. They always think about things in the direction they expect, and make up a lot of reasons for it, and finally take risks. Just like now, the four people only think about the benefits of killing or assisting in killing Qingming, and inevitably associate Qingming's weakened breath with injury. They never thought that Qingming just consumed too much chakra for some other reasons. However, it seems that it is not much different. The breathing of several people became heavier. In the end, it was Inu Ryu who calmed down first. After thinking for a while, he confirmed with happy again that Qingming's breath was indeed much weaker than before, and he was still approaching the black stone base carefully, and finally made up his mind. He looked at one of the Kurigakure Chunin and said, "Qingming, you return to the base immediately and tell Captain Osawa what happened here, and ask him to send someone to support us immediately." "Yes, Captain." When Qingming heard what Inu Ryu said, he was a little disappointed, but he was relieved unconsciously. Although following Inu Ryu might gain greater credit, the danger he faced would also increase exponentially. In this case, it would be better to drink a mouthful of soup. That's the ghost sword Qingming, one of the twin stars of Konoha. Not to mention the bounty price on the black market, even the bounty offered by the village is enough to make him jealous. Even if it's just a mouthful of soup, it's not bad for him. After Qingming left, Inu Ryu looked at the ninja dog at his feet and said in a deep voice, "Happy, find him?" "Yeah," Happy simply responded, then sniffed the air and began to run wildly in one direction. In the back, Inu Ryu glanced at the two team members beside him and immediately said, "Follow me." As he said that, he took the lead and ran forward. Seeing this, the two mist-hidden ninjas behind him tightened their kunai in their hands and hurriedly followed. On the other side, Qingming was advancing cautiously in the forest. Suddenly, he stopped and looked back. For some reason, he suddenly felt that someone was watching him. "Is it an illusion?" Qingming muttered, and carefully sensed for a moment, but still found nothing. Shaking his head, he was about to take a step forward, but his movement suddenly stopped, and in the end, the foot did not fall. Qingming still believed in his intuition very much. Especially in this world with extraordinary power, intuition is sometimes more reliable than feeling. Because this may be your subconscious mind summarizing various details that you have ignored, and then coming to a conclusion. So Qingming decided to explore it. It happened that he had just transplanted the Byakugan and had this ability. However, before that, he still had to make sure that there was no one around. With this thought, Qingming suddenly opened the Sharingan and scanned the surroundings. Nothing abnormal was found within the visual range. Then, he leaped onto the tree trunk. Then, he closed his Sharingan, raised his hand to unlock the protective seal on his forehead, and then concentrated his mind to activate the Byakugan between his eyebrows. In an instant, his Byakugan passed through the forehead protector and saw everything within a kilometer radius. Chapter 489, Total Annihilation. In just a breath, Qingming found Inu Long and others, and then frowned, muttering, "There are really people." Moreover, judging from the direction they were moving, it was obvious that they were chasing him. With a thought, Qingming focused his attention. Suddenly, these people seemed to be standing in front of him, and he could see them clearly. In the past, when he used the Sharingan to observe others, he could only see some vague chakra air masses. Then, he used this to infer the enemy's strength. But now, with just one glance, he clearly saw the chakra flowing in these people's bodies, as well as the acupuncture points located on the chakra meridians. Sure enough, in this regard, the Byakugan is more powerful. A thought floated through his mind, and Qingming hurried to judge the strength of several people. Judging from the amount of chakra, it should be a special Jonin and two Chunins, as well as a dog. Qingming cast his eyes on the dog, and he also saw chakra from its body. Obviously, this is a ninja dog. As for strength, it is at most at the level of Chunin. Although it is not very rigorous to judge the strength of a person or a ninja dog based on the amount of chakra alone, there is no doubt that the amount of chakra determines a person's upper limit to a large extent. Of course, some people can break this upper limit by mastering some skills such as ninjutsu, jinjutsu, taijutsu, etc. However, most people do not have this talent. Therefore, estimating the enemy's strength in this way is generally accurate. Moreover, even if the opponent can break this upper limit, does Qingming mean that he is mediocre? Don't forget that many of his skills are perfect. Therefore, as long as Qingming confirms that the enemy's strength does not exceed a certain limit, there is no need to care whether the opponent is a genius. And there is no doubt that the 3 people and 1 dog in the back have not exceeded this limit. In this case, he will naturally not be polite. Even if his chakra is a little insufficient now, it is more than enough to deal with these people. Of course, the most important thing is that he has taken the initiative. In this case, he doesn't mind using these people to replenish his almost dry chakra. However, he has to move quickly. Otherwise, it is easy to be surrounded. Qingming did not forget that this was the territory of the Mist Ninja. If he delayed for too long, it would definitely attract the attention of other Mist Ninja teams. By then, it would be a bit troublesome. Thinking this in his heart, Qingming closed his Byakugan. However, he was not in a hurry to cast the Guardian Seal again, because he might need it after the battle. So, let's just leave it like this for now. He stretched out his hand and pressed the Konoha Forward Protector on his head. After his eyes below felt a little more comfortable, he immediately raised his hand to seal and cast the Shadow Clone technique. Bang! With a cloud of chakra smoke dissipating, a figure appeared in front of him. Qingming took off his coat and handed it to the other party, saying, "Take it and keep moving forward." Hearing this, the Shadow Clone did not say anything nonsense. After taking the coat, he rushed forward. Qingming restrained his breath and hid himself in the tree canopy. When he saw the ninja dog, he knew what the other party was based on to track him, and now he could naturally use the same trick against him. Time passed by minute. About 2 minutes later, 3 people and a dog appeared under the tree. Suddenly, Happy, who was walking in the front, stopped. Seeing this, Anurayu and others also stopped. "What's wrong, Happy?" Anurayu looked at Happy and asked. Hearing this, Happy's dog face wrinkled up, sniffing back and forth, and replied, "The smell here is a little bit wrong. The other party seems to have stopped here for a while, and then the smell is divided into 2 streams, one in front, and the other one." At this point, it suddenly looked up. However, what caught its eyes was a glimmer of white knife light. The sense of crisis of death emerged in his heart, and Happy planned to cancel the summoning technique without saying a word. However, the next moment, a pair of scarlet eyes broke into its field of vision, making its consciousness dazed. Not good. Seeing this pair of Sharingan, Happy realized that something was wrong and tried hard to get rid of the influence of this illusion, but he never succeeded. Crack! The sound of bones breaking was heard. Qingming's long sword swept across Happy's neck below. The blade first cut its flesh, then touched the bone, paused for a moment, cut into it, and finally completely cut its neck. Suddenly, a dog head flew up and fell to the side, rolling a few times before it stopped moving. From its last expression, one can still see a strong disbelief. Obviously, it didn't expect that it would die here. Indeed, as summoned beasts, they can escape very easily, as long as the summoning technique is lifted. Therefore, under normal circumstances, even if the ninja who signed a summoning contract with them died, they would not die. However, this does not mean that they will not die. As long as the opportunity is seized and it is impossible for them to lift the summoning technique, they can still be killed. Just like Happy in front of him, when Qingming controlled it with illusion, its death was inevitable. Happy, looking at Happy's body on the ground, Anurayu's eyes instantly turned red. The relationship between Happy and him is far from that between an ordinary summoned beast and its master. He had contracted Happy since he was very young, and many of the knowledge of ninjas was taught by Happy. Moreover, he didn't know how many times Happy had saved him along the way. It can be said that the relationship between the 2 parties is not that of a family, but better than that of a family. But now, the other party is dead. How could this not make Anurayu angry? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh! Several kunai shot out from his hands, aiming directly at Qingming's vital points. However, facing such an attack, Qingming was unusually calm. Just when those kunai were about to hide him, he opened the main Gekkai of Sharingan and activated the pupil technique of his left eye, Shian's Hityu. That's right, Qingming had no intention of getting entangled with these people. He killed Happy in seconds. After confirming that the information here would not be leaked, he used his strongest ability. In an instant, Qingming's figure disappeared. This made Anurayu, who had already taken action, and the 2 mist-hidden ninjas who were just about to take action, both stunned. Then, they immediately looked around, trying to find Qingming's trace. Unfortunately, the power of Heaven's Guard is not something that can be seen by a few mortal eyes. Qingming seemed to be in a different time and space. Looking at the reactions of the 3 people, he appeared behind Anurayu in an instant. The next moment, he released the power of Heaven's Guard. At the moment he appeared, a new Ryu discovered him, and then his face suddenly changed, and he was about to rush forward to avoid the possible attack. Unfortunately, his movements were still too slow. There was a puff sound, and Qingming's long sword pierced his back, and the tip of the sword went straight out of his abdomen in front. Puff! A large mouthful of blood spurted out of Inu Ryu's mouth. He glanced back and vaguely saw a pair of eyes that looked like black suns. He wanted to say something, but before he could open his mouth, Qingming knocked the other person unconscious with a palm. Without rushing to perform the chakra absorption technique, Qingming drew out his long sword, facing the remaining two mist-hidden ninjas, and activated the power of Heaven's Guard again. Silently, his figure disappeared again. This put great pressure on the two. They stood back to back, looking around nervously, alert to the elusive Qingming. However, in front of Sharingan, such vigilance was useless. Swish, Qingming's figure appeared between the two, and then bang punched and kicked, knocking the two away. After they separated, he used Sharingan again and caught up with one of them. This person's strength was not as good as Inu Ryu, and he knocked him out almost the moment he appeared. As for the third person, to deal with this person, Qingming did not waste chakra at all and activated the ability of Sharingan. In just 2 rounds, he found an opportunity and controlled the opponent with a genjutsu, Sharingan. At this point, the 3 people and the dog were all killed. Chapter 490 Return and Awakening. Qingming sighed and closed his Sharingan. Then, without any hesitation, he came to Inu Ryu. At this time, the opponent's abdomen was still bleeding wildly, and his life force was rapidly falling. Qingming was afraid that the opponent would die and waste this great resource, so he quickly performed the chakra absorption technique and placed his palm on the opponent. The next moment, a large amount of chakra flowed out of his body, entered his body through his palm meridians, and transformed into his own chakra. After a few breaths, the opponent's breath disappeared and Qingming stopped performing the technique. Opening the panel and taking a glance, it can be seen that his chakra has increased by about 10,000 points, which is a little lower than the average level of a special Jonin. Qingming can understand this. After all, the opponent was severely injured by him, and both his mental energy and physical energy were seriously lost. In this case, he can still contribute 10,000 points of chakra to him, which is already the result of his superb means and more thorough squeezing. If his chakra absorption technique had not been upgraded to level 6 earlier, he might not have been able to obtain so much chakra. Looking away from the other person, Qingming walked to the other 2 mist-hidden Chunin, then raised his hand to form a seal and performed the chakra absorption technique again. The two, one was knocked out by him physically and the other was controlled by him with illusion. Neither of them suffered any serious injuries. In addition, the battle between the two sides was extremely short, and the two hardly consumed much chakra. Therefore, the two contributed more than 18,000 points of chakra to him, which was much higher than the Chunin on the battlefield. This made Qingming feel a little more comfortable. And these 3 people together, a total of nearly 30,000 points of chakra in his body. This much chakra is already more than 90% of the Jonin. In this way, plus his own chakra, he will not lack chakra for the time being. However, despite this, Qingming still does not plan to stay here for long. Although today's operation was relatively smooth and did not last long, it was an extremely severe test for his spirit and will. Now, he urgently needs a break to relax his body and mind. Therefore, he can't stay here for long. With this thought in mind, Qingming quickly moved the bodies of the 3 people and the dog together, then raised his hand to form a seal and performed the fire-style Sushoku Jutsu. Boom! With a ball of fire appearing, the bodies of the 3 people and the dog quickly burned up. During this period, Qingming opened his Byakugan again, and after confirming that there was no one within a kilometer, he performed the Guardian Seal to seal it completely. After doing all this, the bodies on the ground were almost burned. Qingming didn't waste time and immediately ran towards the direction of the Blackstone stronghold. What he didn't know was that just after he left for a while, a group of mist ninjas arrived here. The leader was the ice-style ninja who was attacked by him and Uchiha Qingming together, Yukinoka. And beside him, there were several mist-hidden ninjas and a mist-hidden ninja. This mist-hidden ninja was none other than Iro Hideaki, who was sent by Inu Ryu to deliver the message. Obviously, these people were the ones the other party had sent to deal with him. Unfortunately, he was too quick and finally escaped. And these people looked at the charred bodies on the ground, and they had no choice but to be furious. In the Blackstone stronghold, Qingming left quietly and returned quietly. He first went to the command center, and after confirming that there was nothing to do today, he went straight back to his residence. After that, he did not practice or do other things, but fell asleep directly. No matter when, sleep is the best way to relieve fatigue. And he slept until the next morning, a full 12 or 13 hours. When the first ray of sunlight in the morning shone on his face through the gap in the window, Qingming felt a sense of comfort. This time, not only did his fatigue from yesterday disappear, but also the fatigue caused by the long-term compression of sleep time in the past few months disappeared. Qingming stretched his waist hard, and his bones creaked. Ah, comfortable, Qingming sighed, rolled over, jumped off the bed, and stood on the ground. He walked quickly to the bathroom and washed his face. He looked at himself in the mirror. There was a faint mark similar to section between his eyebrows. Qingming touched the mark. Even through the seal, he could still sense the Byakugan inside. All this shows that everything yesterday was not a dream, but that he really completed this transformation. Well, one less shortcoming, very good, Qingming muttered and continued to wash, while thinking about what to do next. Yesterday, he had decided not to pay more attention to the incomplete bloodline of the Byakugan before the Mangekyo Sharingan was promoted to the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. In other words, this work can come to an end for the time being. Then, next, he should continue to improve the proficiency of various skills according to the previous plan. Other skills aside, several Earth Escape ninjutsu must be improved as soon as possible. Only by raising their levels can he better master the Earth Attribute Chakra. After he has mastered the Earth Attribute Chakra to a certain extent, he can start to develop a Lightning Attribute Chakra. By then, he will have all 5 types of chakra, so he will have no shortcomings in conventional ninjutsu. No matter what ninjutsu the enemy uses, he can always find a counter to it. In addition, if he adds the yin and yang chakras, he will have a chance to master the power of the bloodline network. This is a power that is superior to the bloodline limit and bloodline elimination. In his memory, all the moves that can be classified as bloodline networks are extremely powerful. For example, there is no need to make a seal, and a black portal can be opened out of thin air, allowing people to travel freely in different spaces. For example, the yellow spring Hirasaka can use bones as weapons to hit the enemy, which can cause the enemy's body to collapse in a few seconds, and even the yin-yang escape technique cannot cure it. These are all terrifying abilities, and they are all bloodline network moves. Qingming didn't know if he could develop similar abilities, but as long as there was a possibility, it was enough for him to work hard for it. Moreover, it didn't require him to invest too much extra energy. As long as he practiced step by step, he would be able to master the basics. In this way, there was no need for him to give up. Chapter 491, War breaks out again. After washing up, Qingming just walked out of the house and was about to go to the cafeteria for a full meal. But at this moment, an explosion suddenly came from outside the base. Although it was not loud, Qingming still heard it. He paused slightly, closed his eyes, focused his attention on hearing, and listened carefully. Boom 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 faintly, there were several more explosions. Qingming opened his eyes and muttered, "Yes, it's the sound of the detonating talisman. Is the mist ninja starting to attack again?" With this thought, he took out a few ration pills from his ninja bag, stuffed them into his mouth, and chewed them with a crackling sound. Soon, a feeling of fullness came. Qingming no longer hesitated, and immediately raised his hand to form a seal, and performed the ninjutsu, wind style, wings of wind, flew high into the sky, and flew to the place where the explosion occurred. 10 seconds later, he came to the west of the base, above a dense forest. Looking down from here, you can see that there are 2 teams fighting fiercely in the forest, one of which is the Mist Ninja and the other is the Konoha Ninja. However, compared with a small team of Konoha, the Mist Ninja had more people, 3 teams and 12 ninjas. The explosion just now was caused by this Konoha team. They realized that they were not the opponent of the Mist Ninja, so they immediately used the detonating tags and frequently made a big noise. This was not only a warning to the stronghold, but also a call for reinforcements. Facts have proved that their choice was not wrong. Look, Qingming came. He instantly opened the Sharingan and scanned the battlefield. It can be seen that there are not many Mist Ninjas in the visible area, but there are faint sounds of fighting in other places. Obviously, the Mist Ninjas are not only targeting this Konoha reconnaissance team, but as he expected, they launched another attack after a day of rest. However, he doesn't need to worry about these places for the time being. There must be someone in the stronghold who has discovered the movement, and the defense is left to them. As for him, Qingming looked at the mist ninjas below with a sharp gaze, just like a hungry wolf seeing delicious food, his eyes full of greed. It's not his fault that he behaved like this, but he needs chakra too much now. If he wants to master Earth Attribute Chakra to a higher degree, he must improve the proficiency of the 3 Earth Escape ninjutsu on the panel. Among them, Earth Escape, hardening technique is easy to say. Even if he had allocated 20,000 chakra points to Fire Escape, Susho no Jutsu before, it can still obtain his 50,000 chakra investment every day. And these chakras are enough for it to gain 500 points of proficiency every day. This is almost enough. However, Earth Escape, Turbulent Spear is different from Earth Escape, Earth Flow Wall. Since they entered the door, he has not allocated more chakra to them. And this is obviously not possible. Therefore, he now urgently needs external chakra to supply their growth. There is no doubt that the 3 Mist Ninja teams below are the best resources. Among these people, except for the captain of one team who is a special Jonin, all the others are only at the level of Chunin. Such strength is exactly what he likes. Without further delay, Qingming flapped his wings and immediately lowered the altitude. However, he was not in a hurry to fall down, but raised his hand to seal and performed the ninjutsu, Fire Style, Great Dragon Fire Style. Puff a flame spurted out of his mouth and instantly turned into 3 fire dragons, burning towards the Kurigakure ninjas below. Feeling the scorching heat coming from above, the Kurigakure ninjas immediately scattered, and the Konoha ninjas in the field finally breathed a sigh of relief. They looked at Qingming in the sky, their eyes full of excitement. Qingming also saw them, and immediately performed the heart-connecting technique to let them join forces to deal with the Kurigakure special Jonin. As for the others, don't worry about it. Hearing Qingming's order, the 4 of them immediately joined forces to attack the Kurigakure special Jonin without any hesitation. Seeing this, the other Kurigakure Chunins wanted to get involved. Unfortunately, Qingming had already set his sights on them, so how could he let them participate in other battles at will? Aiming at one of the fastest runners, Qingming raised his hand to seal and directly performed the ninjutsu, Fire Style, Sashoku. Thanks to the powerful insight of the Sharingan, the accuracy of his performance of this technique is much higher than that of ordinary Anbu or root ninjas. The Kurigakure Chunin only felt a pain in his body, and a flame rose from his body surface, instantly covering his whole body. A painful wail sounded. He took off his clothes and rolled on the ground, trying to put out the flames on his body. However, with the supply of Qingming's chakra, this flame was not so easy to put out. Seeing this, the other 2 Kurigakure Chunin reacted quickly, immediately raised their hands to form seals, and performed the ninjutsu, Water Style, Water Wave on him. Puff puff 2 streams of water appeared and poured on him. Qingming saw that the opponent had almost lost his combat effectiveness, so he gave up the supply of chakra. As a result, the flames on this person were finally extinguished. However, the 2 Kurigakure Chunin who were responsible for extinguishing the flames on their bodies were in big trouble, because they were targeted by Qingming. Swish, 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 several shurikens flew out from his hands. The 2 men were unable to react in time, and although they dodged some, they were still hit by 2 shurikens. Although they were not in a vital position, it was enough to affect their mobility. Taking this opportunity, Qingming once again used the Fire Style, Great Dragon Fire technique, controlling 3 fire dragons to burn the 2 men and another Mist Village Chunin who tried to help the Mist Village special Jonin. The 3 men were chased by the giant fire dragon and had to flee in embarrassment. Qingming's 3 Magatama Sharingan was pushed to the limit, quickly locked onto one of them, observed his evasive route, and then used the ninjutsu, Wind Style, Wind Blade. His Wind Style, Wind Blade had already been promoted to the perfect state of LV700. Under intentional control, people with slightly worse perception could not detect it at all. Just like the Mist Village Chunin who was targeted by him, he was still running forward, and his legs were cut off by a meter-long transparent wind blade. His upper body rushed forward for a distance before falling to the ground. It was only then that he felt the pain and uttered a wail. A large amount of blood flowed from his legs. Qingming was afraid that the other party would die. So he flapped his wings and landed not far from the other party. Then, without any hesitation, he immediately performed the shadow clone technique. Bang! Accompanied by a cloud of chakra smoke exploding, 4 shadow clones appeared in the field. Without Qingming's orders, the moment they appeared, They attacked the remaining 9 mist hidden ninjas. As for Qingming himself, of course he quickly absorbed the chakra of the man in front of him and the chunin who was dying of being burned by his fire style, Shishoku technique. Seeing Qingming coming towards him, Endokiji was terrified. He endured the severe pain in his legs and threw the kunai in his hand. However, such an attack was doomed to be futile. Qingming simply turned his head to avoid the attack. Then, he flashed in front of the opponent, and without waiting for him to speak, he used the chakra absorption technique and grabbed the opponent's neck. Suddenly, a large amount of chakra was absorbed by him, and the opponent's breath also weakened rapidly. Chapter 492 Solution and Harvest. A few seconds later, Qingming released his hand. At this time, the man had turned into a corpse, and at the same time provided him with about 7,000 chakra points, which was an average level. Qingming did not waste a moment, and after shaking off the blood on his palm, he came to the dying Kurigakure Chunin. However, at this moment, the man suddenly opened his eyes and shouted madly, "Go to hell, you little devil!" As he spoke, he stretched out his right hand, trying to catch him. However, facing such a change, Qingming's face did not change at all, and a pair of 3 Magatama Sharingan quietly stared at the other party, extremely calm. The next moment, a cold light flashed. There was a sizzling sound, and the man's right hand flew out. Not only that, Qingming also stretched out his left hand, instantly tore open his mutilated right arm, and peeled off a burning detonating talisman from the position above his waist that was hidden. Obviously, the other party just wanted to hold him and die with him. Unfortunately, all these little moves were exposed under the watchful eyes of his Sharingan. Qingming's expression remained unchanged, and he threw the detonating talisman. A loud bang was heard, and a large tree not far away was blown down, but Qingming was not hurt at all. Seeing that the Kurigakure Chunin in front of him still wanted to resist, Qingming had an idea, and at the moment when their eyes crossed, he cast the Genjutsu Sharingan. In an instant, the other party became quiet. Qingming did not delay at all, and cast the chakra absorption technique with his hand. After draining it, he got nearly 7,000 chakras again. Qingming nodded with satisfaction. Then, he stood up and looked at the battlefield around him. At this time, the Kurigakure Special Junin was being besieged by 4 members of the Konoha reconnaissance team. The team that can be sent out to perform reconnaissance missions is basically led by a special Junin and accompanied by 3 Chunins. This Konoha team is no exception. In other words, the Kurigakure Special Junin was facing an opponent of the same level and 3 slightly inferior opponents. In this case, let alone gaining an advantage, it was a question whether he could maintain his position. On the other hand, the situation of the 9 Kurigakure Chunins was not much better. Although Qingming sent out only 4 shadow clones, their ability to withstand injuries was inherently insufficient. As long as they were hit once, they could basically defeat them. It seemed that they were not difficult to deal with. In fact, it was not. With the combat power of these shadow clones, even if they were 1 against 2, these Kurigakure Chunins could not challenge them. One by one, relying on their speed far exceeding that of the opponent, they surrounded the 9 people like ghosts and launched continuous attacks. It was difficult for these Kurigakure ninjas to touch them, let alone defeat them. Even at the moment when Qingming was observing, a Kurigakure Chunin was caught by a shadow clone and pressed on the chest with a palm. In an instant, the power of the Rasengan exploded and blasted him away. Bang! The Kurigakure Chunin fell heavily to the ground. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth. Just as he was struggling to stand up while enduring the pain in his chest, a hand reached out, as if to pull him up. Instinctively, the Kurigakure Chunin intended to grab this hand. However, the next moment, his movements froze in place. It was because he suddenly thought that the direction he had just flown out seemed to be the direction where Qingming's body was. Then this hand, in an instant, the Kurigakure Chunin's scalp numbed, and his eyes unconsciously looked up along the palm, and then he saw a slightly childish face. If it wasn't Qingming, who else could it be? You puff! The Kurigakure Chunin was emotional, and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood again, and then planned to stay away from Qingming. However, before he could make any move, Qingming grabbed his hand first. The next moment, the chakra absorption technique was activated. Suddenly, a large amount of chakra was like a floodgate being opened, and it gushed out of the body crazily. No, the Kurigakure Chunin was terrified and roared. His left hand clenched into a fist and punched Qingming in the face. However, facing such an attack, Qingming did not dodge or evade, and endured the punch, and his cheek swelled up. After a successful punch, the Kurigakure Chunin wanted to throw a second punch. But at this moment, he found that he had no strength left. At the same time, Qingming's self-healing ability began to take effect, and the slight swelling on his cheek quickly disappeared. And his men had another body that was completely drained. All this happened too quickly, and the other Kurigakure Chunin had no time to rescue him. Of course, even if they wanted to rescue him, the 4 shadow clones would not allow it. After draining the Kurigakure Chunin's chakra, Qingming did not waste time and immediately joined the battle with the shadow clones. And with his joining, these shadow clones seemed to have a backbone, and their strength was fully exerted. In the end, it took less than 3 minutes for all 8 Kurigakure Chunin to be dealt with by him and his shadow clones. Even these people didn't even have the chance to escape. Qingming sent 4 shadow clones to assist the Konoha team in capturing and killing the Kurigakure special Jonin, while he himself began to extract the chakra of these Kurigakure ninjas. During this period, because there was too much chakra, it exceeded the limit of what his body could hold, so he had to split a few more shadow clones to continue to spread the chakra in his body. After knocking down the Kurigakure special Jonin and draining his chakra, the number of shadow clones in the field had increased to 8. Qingming made a brief calculation and concluded that in this battle, he had gained a total of almost 90,000 chakras. If these chakras were evenly distributed to the Earth Style, Earth Flow Wall and the Earth Style, Earth Rising Spear, they would be enough to raise their levels by 1 level each. Unfortunately, now is not a good time to practice these skills. Qingming has been thinking about whether he needs to develop a sealing technique similar to the Yin Seal that can store chakra. Perhaps, it is really necessary. Qingming thought that even if there would be few opportunities to harvest chakra in this way in the future, after he got the tailed beast, he would have a constant supply of chakra and would need something that could temporarily store a large amount of chakra. After all, he couldn't take the tailed beast with him everywhere, right? Therefore, it was necessary to create a similar sealing technique. However, these were all later. As for now, it didn't matter. As long as he didn't release the shadow clone technique for the time being, and as long as he could use the various skills that he originally needed to practice in the next battle, his chakra would not be wasted. As for Earth Style, Earth Flow Wall and Earth Style, Earth Rising Spear, at most he could practice them with his recovered chakra after the battle. There was no need to be so rigid in life. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 493 New Transfer Order and Turning Point. Okay, it's time for us to go. After absorbing all the chakra of the Mist Ninja, Qingming looked at the panting Konoha team of 4 and spoke. Hearing this, several Konoha ninjas didn't waste any words and immediately followed him and the 8 shadow clones and headed towards the base. Although a war would definitely break out between the two sides, they still had to go back first and set off after determining their respective tasks. Only in this way can everyone's strength be maximized. And the development of things was almost the same as Qingming expected. He had just returned to the base when he was called over by Shinobuhisa. However, there was no time for a meeting this time, or in other words, everyone's tasks had basically been fixed in the past week or so. Therefore, there was no need to have such a cumbersome process as a meeting. After seeing him, Shinobuhisa immediately assigned him a task. As usual, in addition to treating the wounded at night, he was responsible for supporting various battlefields at any time as a mobile force. That's right, his task in the past week was this, and only in this way could he give full play to his flying advantage. After receiving the mission, Qingming did not stay and immediately rushed to the first battlefield. There were several teams fighting here. Because Konoha was caught off guard, it was in a disadvantage of fighting with fewer people, just like the reconnaissance team just now. However, the appearance of Qingming changed the situation instantly. However, he did not immediately fall down to fight with a Mist Ninja as before, but took advantage of the air advantage to continuously perform various ninjutsu and launch long-range strikes against the Mist Ninja. Not only that, on the ground, the shadow clones who followed him did not engage in too much close combat, but frequently used various ninjutsu to attack the enemy. And the reason why he did this was for one and only one purpose, that is, to seize every opportunity to improve himself. Admittedly, due to the needs of the battle, He could not use the least chakra every time to perform each ninjutsu or illusion to gain proficiency. Doing so would inevitably waste some chakra. However, Qingming can save time for subsequent practice of various skills. And this is completely worthwhile for him who can fight to support himself. Therefore, Qingming did not hesitate to use his chakra, and never hesitated when it was time to use powerful ninjutsu. So, the battle was over soon. Some mist ninjas and some Konoha ninjas died in the battle, and the rest temporarily left the battle. After doing all this, Qingming returned to the base. When there was no mission, he practiced a palm immortal technique and reflection heart technique. When there was a mission, he flew to different directions according to the intelligence to support his own ninjas there. In this way, Qingming followed his plan, participated in the war, and improved himself, and every day was extremely fulfilling. And this battle was just as he expected. It was a sign that the mist ninjas of Fiyu town would launch another attack. In the next 3 days, they continued to attack the Blackstone base in the form of small teams, just like a week ago. And Sano Nobuhisa also sent small teams to fight. On this small battlefield, the ninjas of both sides were like cold machines without thoughts. Under one order after another, they fought and consumed each other. As if there would never be an end. Time flies, and it is the 4th day. Early in the morning of this day, Qingming hurriedly ate a few Binglian pills to fill his stomach, and then rushed to the meeting room to see if there are any new arrangements for today. Originally, he thought he was just going to go through the motions. Unexpectedly, there are actually new arrangements today. Command Center. In a small meeting room, Sano Nobuhisa looked at Qingming and Uchiha Shiso in front of him, and finally said, "This is the situation. Captain Nara just sent a message, asking you to rush to Aburatsu port together." That's right, just now, Nara Qingming, the commander-in-chief in charge of Konoha's entire defense line facing the Hidden Mist village, issued the latest transfer order, asking him and Uchiha Shiso to rush to Aburatsu port for support. Although he had known the village's plan from Sano Nobuhisa a long time ago, and knew that if the southern defense line could not hold on, Nara Qingming would most likely recruit senior ninjas from various strongholds first. However, he really didn't expect that he and Uchiha Shiso would be drawn in the first round. There were so many Jonins, but they were chosen. Qingming couldn't help but think more, wondering if there was something fishy about it. However, the strength of the two of them was indeed very conspicuous among the Jonins, so it was normal for them to be chosen. Therefore, Qingming didn't know if there was any problem. After thinking for a long time, there was no result, so Qingming simply gave up thinking about it. Anyway, with his current strength, he was not afraid of any conspiracy. So, let's take it one step at a time. Thinking like this in his heart, Qingming gathered his thoughts, looked at Nobuhisa Sano again, and said, "When do we set off?" "Right now," Nobuhisa Sano replied. Hearing this, Qingming frowned slightly and asked, "Are you in such a hurry?" "Yeah," Nobuhisa Sano nodded seriously, and after a slight hesitation, he still revealed some secret information to Qingming. Then he whispered, "The village's plan may have been noticed by the Kirigakure. Since yesterday, they suddenly increased their offensive. We were caught off guard and suffered some serious losses. Now, the southern defense line needs manpower to buy time, so we urgently summoned you." Hearing this, Qingming suddenly realized, yes, from the news that came before, although the battle on the southern defense line was fierce, it was not to the extent that it was necessary to withdraw manpower from other strongholds. Now suddenly withdrawing manpower without any signs during the period, there must be an emergency, otherwise Nara Qingming would not have issued such an order. You know, such a transfer order is not only sent to them, but other strongholds will also receive it, and they also need to withdraw manpower for support. However, these strongholds are also under attack by the Kirigakure. Once too many Jonin, who are the backbone or even the top force, are withdrawn, it is very likely that these strongholds will fall. Therefore, unless it is absolutely necessary, Nara Qingming will definitely not issue such an order. Before, Qingming was still confused, but now he understands. It seems that it was because of the information leak that Kirigakure knew the plans of some villages, which led to all this. Qingming felt relieved after all the doubts in his heart disappeared. After that, he talked with Sano Nobuhisa for a few more words, and then left a meeting room with Uchiha Shiso, ready to pack up and go to Aburatsu port together. The so-called Aburatsu port is the gap in the southern defense line that was breached by Kirigakure village. And the main battlefield of Kirigakure's attack on Konoha is there. Qingming has a vague premonition that the next battle is likely to be the turning point of this ninja world war. After this war may really come to an end. Chapter 494 Interception. Half an hour later. Outside the Blackstone stronghold. In a dense forest in the southwest. Qingming and Uchiha Shisu carefully walked through it, trying their best to avoid the wandering mist ninjas in the battlefields. In order to ensure that their whereabouts were not discovered and to take care of Uchiha Shisu, Qingming did not fly out of the stronghold directly this time, but prepared to cross the battlefield outside the stronghold with Uchiha Shisu. This may be a bit troublesome for ordinary people. But Qingming and Uchiha Shisu are not ordinary people. Their excellent perception allows them to easily avoid the mist ninjas along the way. Therefore, although it took some time, the two of them successfully left the battlefield. After that, the two did not hesitate and immediately accelerated forward. According to the map, they went straight to the location of Aojin Port. In a flash, several hours passed. It was noon. Under the not-so-strong sunlight, Qingming and Uchiha Shisu ran across the field, rapidly approaching a dense forest in front. After walking through this dense forest for another half an hour, we will basically reach the gathering place in the transfer order. Entering the dense forest, a light mist shrouds it. The light from above shines through the gaps between the leaves, and under the effect of the Tyndall effect, a series of light paths are formed, which looks extremely beautiful. However, neither Qingming nor Uchiha Shisu has the heart to appreciate such a beautiful scenery. It is because it is almost noon now. Even if the air humidity in the forest is high, such a mist should not be formed. Therefore, there must be a problem. The two suddenly stopped and looked at each other. They immediately understood each other's meaning and stood back to back. Qingming let go of his perception and carefully felt everything around him. Indistinctly, he felt a familiar smell in the mist, the smell of chakra. Mist hidden technique. In an instant, Qingming thought of this technique. At this moment, dense kunai suddenly shot from all sides, like raindrops, densely hitting Qingming and Uchiha Shisu. "Be careful," Uchiha Shisu shouted, and immediately opened his Sharingan. He took a step forward, waved the kunai in his hand, and blocked the kunai attack from behind. However, Qingming in front of him did not move. But just when the kunai was about to hide him, his skin suddenly changed from white to rough, like rock, giving people a feeling of indestructibility. In fact, it was true. After 3 days of practice, his earth-style hardening technique has been upgraded from LV5, 3500-5000, to LV6, 200/10000. At this time, both his casting speed and the effect of ninjutsu are far beyond LV5. Therefore, these kunai shot at him, only making a series of ding-dong sounds, and failed to cause any damage to him. Taking the opportunity, Qingming locked his eyes on the direction of the kunai, kicked the ground, and the whole person bounced out like a cannonball. In the forest, some mist-hidden ninja looked at Qingming who was rushing towards them. Their faces changed drastically, and they immediately wanted to avoid him. Fortunately, there were still Johnins above to suppress it, so there was no big chaos. At this time, a Jonin of Kurigakure shouted loudly, "Everyone, keep attacking!" Hearing this, the Kurigakure Chunin threw the kunai in their hands again and shot at Qingming. And the Jonin of Kurigakure found an opportunity to mix a few kunai with detonating talismans in it. Unfortunately, such a trick could not be hidden from Qingming. He opened his Sharingan and locked those kunai with just a glance. Although he felt that his earth-style hardening technique should be able to withstand such explosive damage, in order to save chakra and just in case, he still did not resist it. Qingming stepped on the ground with his right foot, and his whole body instantly changed from moving vertically forward to moving horizontally. The next moment, dozens of kunai passed through the afterimage he left behind and shot at the ground and tree trunks behind him, making a chi-chi-chi sound. Then, there was the sound of the detonating talisman exploding. Along with a huge explosion, there were shock waves spreading all around, shaking the surrounding trees. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Several shurikens were fired from Qingming's hands, passing through the gaps between the trees and shooting towards the mist ninjas. Ah, ah! 2 short screams rang out in succession. Obviously, someone was hit. Qingming's ears moved slightly, listening to the sound to determine the location, and immediately raised his hand to form a seal and cast a ninjutsu, fire style, Phoenix fire technique. In an instant, dense balls of fire spewed out of his mouth, like a meteor shower, hitting the mist ninjas. Disperse, in the forest, with a light shout, All the mist ninjas removed their disguises and dispersed to both sides. Qingming's Sharingan rotated rapidly, locking onto the whereabouts of these mist ninjas. Then, the hand seal in his palm changed, and the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique was lifted, and he turned to cast a ninjutsu fire style, Great Dragon Fire technique. Puff a flame gushed out of his mouth, and in an instant it turned into 3 thick fire dragons, which rushed towards the mist ninjas from the left, middle and right directions. Facing his seamless ninjutsu attack, the mist ninjas on the left and right sides still had room to dodge, and immediately avoided the fire dragon's attack one by one. However, the mist ninjas in the middle area were not so lucky. At the last moment, Qingming deliberately controlled the fire dragons on the left and right sides to sandwich them, and these mist ninjas had no place to dodge. In the end, 3 mist hidden ninjas stood up and almost at the same time, they performed the ninjutsu, water-style water array wall. A water wall suddenly stood up, blocking the left and right sides and the front of the team. The fire dragon controlled by Qingming hid it, and although it almost broke through it, it was finally stopped. Haha, there's something. Seeing the tacit understanding of the 3 people, Qingming sneered. Then, he dodged the kunai and shuriken shot by other mist ninjas, and at the same time, he formed a seal and performed a new ninjutsu, Earth Style, Earth Lance. Yes, it was this technique. In the past 3 days, he had plundered more than 300,000 chakra points from the mist ninjas, and almost half of them were used by him to practice this technique. Therefore, the level of this technique is now at level 4. Although it is only at level 4, it is enough to use it. And the current situation is just suitable for this point-to-point attack. Qingming completed the seal, stepped on the ground, and injected a large amount of earth-style chakra into the soil. Then, sharp earth spikes emerged from the ground and stabbed at the mist ninjas in front of him like lightning. It can be seen that the positions of these spikes are very accurate, and it is definitely impossible to do this with a level 4 earth-style, Earth Lance. In fact, it is true. The reason why he can control each spike and accurately attack an enemy is not only because he has the Sharingan, which can predict the actions of these people, but also because his chakra control has been promoted to level 6 early. This skill may seem ordinary, but it is not. It affects every ninjutsu he performs. It is precisely because of the blessing of level 6 chakra control that his Earth Style, Earth Spear is so powerful. Chapter 495 Brutal. Screams came one after another. Qingming made one move, and several mist ninjas were unable to react in time. Some were scratched by the earth spikes, some had their feet pierced by them, and some even lost their lives. In short, the mist ninjas' plan was completely disrupted by him. Until then, both sides could observe each other calmly. Qingming saw that there were about 20 to 30 mist ninjas in front of him. The strongest among them were 2 mist hidden ninjas, and the weakest was a mist hidden ninja. However, the other party did not die under his series of attacks just now, which means that their strength is not bad. From this, it can be seen that the overall strength of these mist ninjas is not bad. Led by 2 Jonins, there is such a group of strong subordinates ambushing on the way to support them, which makes Qingming feel bad. It's not that someone is calculating against them. After all, this road is almost the only way for all Konoha ninjas who come to support from the central and northern defense lines. They are not the only ones who can go. Therefore, it is unlikely that the enemy deliberately targeted him and Uchiha Shisu. The reason why he felt bad was that this place was not far from the gathering point. He could meet so many mist ninjas here. It was conceivable how bad the situation here was. Qingming was worried about the pressure they would have to bear next. As for the people in front of him, to be honest, Qingming didn't take them seriously. 2 Jonins with no special talents, plus a bunch of middle and lower ninjas, could not be his opponents at all. This was one of the reasons why he felt that these people were not deliberately targeting him and Uchiha Shisu. If the hidden mist village specially arranged people to ambush them here, the number and quality of the enemy would at least double. After all, his and Uchiha Shisu's battle records were all in the open, and these people could not deal with them at all. The hidden mist village could not be so unwise. At the same time, this also showed that their whereabouts had not been leaked. And this made Qingming feel relieved. If this was the case, their whereabouts could still be leaked, which meant that they had a big problem internally. No matter what time it is, home thieves are the most difficult to guard against. Qingming doesn't want to be on guard against being stabbed in the back by his own people every moment. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and Qingming raised his hand again to form a seal and performed a ninjutsu, fire style, great dragon fire technique. Now, his several sword techniques have been perfected. If it is not necessary, he really doesn't want to use sword techniques to fight, because this is not good at all except wasting chakra. On the contrary, using ninjutsu to fight can not only strike the enemy, but also gain proficiency, which can be said to kill two birds with one stone. As for the little chakra wasted during the period, as long as he pays attention to leaving a few survivors, he can draw chakra from them after the battle to replenish it. Pulling back his sight, he saw 3 fire dragons spewing out of Qingming's mouth, and then under his control, they pounced on a group of mist ninjas. However, these mist ninjas had already been dispersed by a series of previous attacks. Therefore, the targets that the fire dragons can target are very limited. And fewer people means easier to dodge. Therefore, the 3 fire dragons failed to cause any casualties to the mist ninjas. They passed through the mist ninja team and crashed into several large trees in the back. Boom boom boom, the raging flames spread in all directions, instantly igniting the trees in this area and turning it into a sea of fire. Affected by this, the mist ninjas had to flee in all directions and leave this area. Qingming seized the opportunity and used the ninjutsu, fire style, Sushoku Jutsu on one of them. Boom, a ball of flame appeared out of thin air and wrapped the man. In the blink of an eye, the flames covered his entire body. A painful wail came from the man's mouth. He rolled on the ground, trying to put out the flames on his body. Seeing this, several mist ninjas next to him also hurriedly approached him and prepared to help him put out the fire. Seeing this scene, Qingming secretly said, "Good opportunity." Then, he planned to attack these people. However, at this moment, a figure appeared beside him, holding a sickle-shaped ninja tool in his hand, hooking it to his neck. It can be predicted that once hit by this move, his throat and carotid artery will be cut instantly, causing him fatal injuries such as suffocation and massive blood loss. As for blocking, this kind of strange ninja tool requires surprise. Without prior preparation, it is difficult for ordinary people to perfectly block it. Even if you barely block it, you will fall into the subsequent trap and lose the initiative. However, Qingming is not an ordinary person. Almost at the moment when the opponent appeared, his peripheral vision swept over, and the 3 megatoma in his pupils rotated rapidly. In his eyes, the man's movements were like slow motion, approaching him little by little. At this moment, Qingming's thinking speed was far beyond that of ordinary people, which gave him enough time to think. Therefore, before the opponent's sickle-shaped ninja tool hit him, he drew out the long sword at his waist and perfectly blocked the attack. Not only that, he also used the tip of the knife to pick the opponent's heart with his backhand. Seeing this scene, Tanabe Tomahiko's pupils shrank suddenly, and he immediately retreated to avoid the attack. Seeing this, Qingming was about to raise his foot to chase. However, at this moment, several kunai were shot at him from a distance. Qingming stopped immediately, stopped his steps, and then waved a long sword in his hand to block all the incoming kunai. Looking in the direction where the kunai were shot, Qingming saw a female ninja, one of the only 2 jonin in the field. As for the other jonin, it was naturally the one who had just launched a sneak attack on him. Qingming took a half step back and glanced at the 2 people. They stood on the left and right sides, supporting each other, obviously guarding against his Sharingan illusion. Unfortunately, it was meaningless for 2 ordinary jonins to be careful. Glancing at the group of mist-hidden ninjas who were gathering here in front of him, Qingming attacked immediately without any hesitation. A ray of green light appeared on his body, connecting with his long sword, making his figure disappear in an instant. It was the instant sword technique that he had mastered to perfection. Be careful. Seeing the direction where Qingming was approaching, Tanabe Tomahiko immediately shouted to Quink Emi opposite. That's right, Qingming set his primary target on this female ninja. From the division of labor between the 2 just now, it can be seen that compared with Zaichi Humei, Tanabe Tomahiko is obviously better at close combat. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to launch a sneak attack while Zaichi Humei assisted from a distance. Of course, you have to pick the weak persimmon to squeeze. Qingming will not cause trouble for himself, so he immediately set his sights on Zaichi Humei. The perfect level of instant swordsmanship greatly enhanced his speed, allowing him to cross a distance of more than 10 meters in an instant and attack Zaichi Humei. However, Zaichi Humei is a true jonin after all. Her ability in close combat may not be as good as Tanabe Tomahiko, but it is by no means a shortcoming. Therefore, she still accurately blocked Qingming's attack. However, This is just the beginning. Chapter 496 Escape. Ding, the long sword was blocked. Qingming looked at the mist-hidden ninja in front of him, and his figure disappeared again. The next moment, he appeared on the side of the opponent. Swoosh, a cold light flashed. Qingming swung his sword again. Uchiha sensed the danger and immediately raised the kunai in her hand to block. However, Qingming's move was just to cover. Almost at the moment when Uchiha responded, he launched the instant sword technique again and moved to the other side of the opponent at a very fast speed. Without wasting time to draw the sword, Qingming directly stretched out his left palm, and a high-density chakra ball condensed in his palm, and then he pressed it towards the female ninja in front of him. Yes, this is the unprinted ninjutsu, Rasengan. A strong sense of crisis came over her heart, and Uchiha was almost suffocated. However, the strong will of the ninja still allowed her to withstand the pressure of death and react at the most critical moment. Bang, Qingming's palm fell on her, but only splashed water. Water substitute, Qingming murmured when he saw the splash. After saying that, he looked up and saw Uchiha leaning against a big tree, looking at him with a look of surprise. Ignoring the other's gaze, Qingming lowered his sight and saw some blood on her waist. Obviously, although she had used the water substitute at the critical moment just now, she did not completely avoid his attack. Now, his Rasengan proficiency is as high as level 7. Although the chakra he just gathered is not much, the power is not small. Therefore, just touching the other party is enough to cause damage to her. Looking at the other party, Qingming did not waste time, raised his foot again, and used the instant sword technique to get closer to the other party. Ding 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 ding, a series of metal collisions sounded. This time Qingming did not do anything fake, just at a very fast speed, surrounding the other party, constantly launching attacks, wearing down her will. The strong pressure filled Uchiha's heart, making her think wildly. Before, although she had heard of Qingming's name and knew that he was very powerful, she thought that the rumors might be a little exaggerated. It was not until today, when she faced him in person, that she realized that the rumors were not exaggerated, but rather conservative. This put her under great pressure. Ding ding ding, after several consecutive fights, she was about to lose the rhythm of Qingming. At this moment, Tomohiko Tanabe finally found an opportunity, cut into the battlefield and joined the battle. This greatly relieved the pressure on Koike. And Qingming just frowned, and continued to attack the two. With the powerful insight of the Sharingan, the super high level of swordsmanship, and the physical fitness that was completely inconsistent with that of a teenager, Qingming fought 1 against 2 and was not at all inferior. Even as time went on, he gradually gained the upper hand. At this time, the surrounding mist-hidden ninjas had already surrounded them, but they looked at the 3 people fighting in the middle and did not dare to make a move at all. There was no way. Qingming's speed was too fast. They could not find a chance to make a move at all, and could only stand there and watch. This is the embarrassment of a huge difference in strength. Time passed by minute. Unconsciously, 5 minutes had passed. At a certain moment, Qingming's footsteps suddenly paused. Then, in an extremely awkward way, he changed the order of his moves, and the knife that was originally chopped at Tomohiko Tanabe was chopped at Koike. This sudden change in rhythm caught the two of them off guard. Tomohiko Tanabe reacted quickly, and saw that Qingming did not attack him as expected. So, he immediately turned around and swung the sickle-shaped ninja tool in his hand at Qingming. However, after observing his behavior habits for a few minutes, Qingming had already mastered it roughly, and this was an opportunity that Qingming deliberately left, so he dodged it easily. At the same time, Koike, who was attacked by him, did not have such good luck. She had suffered some minor injuries from the previous attack of the Rasengan, and her close combat ability was not as good as Tomohiko Tanabe, so facing Qingming's sudden attack, her reaction was a little worse. Therefore, in the end, she only managed to block Qingming's attack. The kunai and the long sword collided, and a huge force came from them. Uchiha couldn't bear the force and unconsciously took a half step back. Seeing this, Qingming's eyes lit up slightly, and he immediately performed the instant sword technique, dodging Tanabe Tomohiko's second attack and came to the right side of Uchiha. The next moment, the knife flashed, and the extremely condensed wind chakra flowed on the blade, forming an inch-long, visible wind blade. Sizzle, the sound of the sharp blade cutting through flesh and blood sounded. Qingming swung the knife and cut off half of Uchiha's shoulder. Dang, Uchiha couldn't hold the kunai in her hand, so it fell to the ground with a dull sound. Seeing this, Qingming didn't hesitate at all. He turned his wrist and swung the long sword again, slashing at Uchiha's neck. At the critical moment, Tanabe Tomohiko shouted, stomped his feet on the ground, and his speed increased dramatically. He dodged and blocked in front of Uchiha. Ding! The sickle-shaped ninja tool in his hand was raised high, just blocking Qingming's long sword attack. Sparks flew, and the two people exerted force at the same time, and the blades rubbed against each other, making a sharp sizzling sound. Looking at Tomohiko Tanabe in front of him, Qingming had an idea and was about to use the Genjutsu Sharingan. Tomohiko Tanabe seemed to have noticed something, and tried his best to swing Qingming's long sword, and then dodged and retreated 3 or 4 meters away. Before him, Uchiha had already taken the opportunity to stay away from Qingming. Unfortunately, the balance has been broken, and even if the two people are temporarily out of danger, it is meaningless. Qingming's body glowed green again, and he was about to use the instant sword technique to chase the two. However, at this moment, the surrounding mist-hidden ninja finally found an opportunity, either throwing kunai or performing ninjutsu. In short, all attack Qingming. Qingming frowned slightly. He didn't want to pay attention to these people, but the attack range of these people was too large. Not only did they cover the area where he was, but some experienced fighters even launched attacks on the path where he might approach Tanabe Tomohiko and Uchiha. This made Qingming feel uncomfortable. So, Qingming simply went all out and used the earth escape hardening technique to protect himself while killing these mist ninjas. Suddenly, these people were in a mess. Be careful, he's here, get out of the way. Qingming's ears were filled with all kinds of voices, but he ignored them at all, just kept using the instant sword technique and swinging his sword to attack one enemy after another. At this moment, he was like a cold machine, just attacking the enemy according to the optimal solution, and everything else could not interfere with him. Retreat. After an unknown amount of time, a voice suddenly overwhelmed everyone's voices, and issued a retreat order to these mist ninjas. Suddenly, these mist ninjas seemed to have grabbed a life-saving straw and immediately fled in all directions. Looking at their fleeing backs, Qingming did not choose to chase them. Chapter 497 Causes and Consequences. Tap tap tap. The dull sound of footsteps appeared in Ono Kamajiro's ears. He dragged his broken right leg, raised his head with great effort, and looked in the direction where the sound came from. He saw Qingming walking towards him step by step. A strong sense of fear came over him, and Ono Kamijiro unconsciously moved back. He held a kunai tightly in his right hand, as if this could give him a sense of security. Qingming saw the other party's little movements, but he didn't want to talk nonsense with this abandoned child. He flashed and came in front of him. Before he could launch the final counterattack with a kunai in his hand, at the moment when the two looked at each other, he cast the Genjutsu Sharingan and controlled the other party. Kicking away the kunai in the other party's hand, Qingming immediately controlled the illusion and guided the other party to recall all the information he needed. After a moment, Qingming frowned slightly. After a short pause, he raised his hand to form a seal and cast the chakra absorption technique, draining the man's chakra in a breath. After he completely lost his life, he came to another Kirigakure Chunin again, and used the same method to control him with a Genjutsu Sharingan, and then began to read his memory. That's right, Kirigakure's abandoned child is not just Kamijiro Ono. In the battle just now, there were quite a few Kirigakure ninjas who were disabled or seriously injured by him. Among these people, only a few were taken away after Tomohiko Tanabe issued the order to retreat. The rest, basically, stayed here. Therefore, Qingming has enough channels to obtain intelligence and replenish chakra. In terms of intelligence, these people belong to the same team, so it's almost the same. But the chakra, these people added together, is a little too much, and his main body can't accommodate it. As a last resort, Qingming can only split a few shadow clones, while on guard outside, practice a few skills that won't cause too much noise to consume the excess chakra. After Qingming extracted the chakra of all the surviving Kirigakure ninjas, he began to sort out the information he got from these people. Originally, he thought that these people appeared here just to perform some routine tasks, and it was a pure accident to meet them. But from the memories of Ono Kamijiro and others, he knew that this was not an accident. At least, it was not a simple accident. One of the reasons why these people appeared here was to intercept these senior ninjas who came to support. Yes, Kirigakure knew their support plan. According to Ono Kamijiro's memory, earlier today, He received an order from his superiors to follow Tanabe Tamahiko and several other senior ninjas to ambush here. There were also several other members of the brigade who received the same order as him, but the locations of the ambush were different. All of this shows that there are definitely spies from Kirigakure in the front-line camp here. The only thing that makes Qingming feel fortunate is that their specific whereabouts and routes have not been known by the Kirigakure. In other words, these people met him and Uchiha Shisu by accident. And this is just as he speculated, these people did not deliberately target him and Uchiha Shisu, otherwise it would be impossible to send so few people. Look, they overturned. Sure enough, at any time, one's own strength is the most important, Qingming muttered, and stopped thinking about it. And waited for Uchiha Shisu with peace of mind. According to the memories of Ono Kamijiro and others, Qingming knew the overall strength of the other side's Kirigakure brigade. Therefore, the manpower to deal with Uchiha Shisu can be easily calculated, and it is basically the same as that to deal with him. And according to his understanding of Uchiha Shisu's strength, the other party may not be able to do it as cleanly and neatly as him, but he will not encounter any danger, at most it will take a little more effort. Therefore, there is no need for him to support the other party, just wait with peace of mind. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, Uchiha Shisu returned here. Qingming looked at the other party. His breath was still stable, and there were no injuries on his body. Obviously, he won easily. On his side, because he used the earth release hardening technique to resist the opponent's attack at the beginning, his appearance was a little embarrassed, and there were several large holes in his Konoha uniform. Fortunately, there was no blood flowing out. This made Uchiha Shisu slightly relieved. He looked at Qingming and said, "Qingming, do you have any additional findings?" The reason why he said additional findings was that he also learned the Jinjutsu, Sharingan. And if the Jinjutsu, Sharingan is mastered to level 4, it can control the illusion more finely and guide the target into a certain memory, thus achieving an effect similar to memory reading. And with Uchiha Shisu's talent, even without the assistance of the proficiency panel, the proficiency of the mere Jinjutsu, Sharingan must be above level 4. In other words, Uchiha Shisu can also obtain relevant information from the minds of these mist ninjas. It's just that Qingming's Jinjutsu, Sharingan is at a higher level and his pupil power is stronger, so he can get more information. So, he asked this question. And for his question, Qingming didn't think of hiding it, and directly told all the information he got in some speculations. After listening to Qingming's narration, Uchiha Shisu's face was not very good. Obviously, the other party also understood that it didn't matter whether these mist ninjas came for them or not. What was important was that they appeared here. This is enough to show how bad the situation here has become. Seeing that Uchiha Shisu was still thinking, Qingming said directly, "Okay, don't think too much, let's go." As he said that, he lifted the shadow clone technique and began to quickly digest the training experience and memory that these shadow clones had just accumulated. Uchiha Shisu glanced at the shadow clones that disappeared suddenly, but didn't pay much attention. After a simple response, he and Qingming continued to rush to the gathering place. Because they had just been ambushed, the two were very careful on the way. Admittedly, with their strength, according to the intelligence, the strength of the team dispatched by the Mist Ninja this time, it is basically unlikely to pose a fatal threat to them, but the two still dare not be careless. After all, these Mist Hidden Ninjas are too low level and have limited knowledge. Who knows if the Mist Hidden Ninja village will use these guys to set off smoke bombs and then give them a trick. It is related to one's own life, no matter how cautious it is not too much. Fortunately, the worst thing did not happen. The rest of the way was very smooth, and the two did not encounter any form of danger. Time passed by. About an hour later, the two left the dense forest. After that, not far away, they met the patrol team of Konoha. After checking their identities, they successfully entered the Konoha defense zone. After that, after several checks, they finally arrived at the assembly point, which was the front line camp of the southern defense line. From here, it was the battlefield of both sides. Standing in the camp, Qingming could faintly feel the movement coming from there. Obviously, the battlefield ahead was not very peaceful. Chapter 498, Strange. Camp Headquarters. In an office, Qingming looked at Narakayanguang, and Narakayanguang was also looking at him. This was the second time they met. In the past, he had only seen him once when he first came to the battlefield. After that, he had been on the front line. Now, meeting again, it seemed like yesterday. After a moment of silence, Nara Qingming took the lead and said, "I heard that you were ambushed on the way here." "Yeah," Qingming simply responded, but didn't say anything more, just staring at the other party, wanting to get an answer from him. He didn't believe that his experience was an isolated case, nor did he believe that the other party would ignore the source of intelligence from the hidden mist village. He must launch an investigation. Otherwise, there would be no way to give them an explanation. And if they couldn't be reassured, who would dare to leave their backs to the village? So, no matter what, the other party had to give them an explanation. Sure enough, Nara Qingming hesitated for a moment, then took out a document from the drawer, put it on the table, and pushed it to him. Qingming looked at the document on the table, but he didn't rush to take it. Instead, he asked in confusion, "This is, open it and take a look?" Nara Qingming didn't explain, but just raised his chin and motioned him to open it. Qingming didn't say anything nonsense, and immediately picked up the document, opened it, and quickly browsed through it. As he browsed, his face became more and more ugly. There was no other reason. There were dozens of leaks recorded on it, some big and some small, and the losses caused were also light and heavy. But until now, no case has been solved. This made Qingming feel incredible. This kind of continuous leaks in a short period of time, not to mention in this world with extraordinary power, even in the previous life, can quickly get to the bottom of it. After all, the more you do, the more mistakes you make. No matter how sophisticated the other party's methods are, there will always be some traces left, and these traces add up to clues. In this way, plus Nara Qingming is a smart man, it shouldn't be nothing. However, the fact is that until now, he has not found any results. This is a big problem. Qingming frowned, his brain was working fast, trying to figure out what was going on. However, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. Seeing Qingming frowning, Nara Qingming tapped the table lightly to wake Qingming from his meditation. Then, Qingming heard him say, "You have also seen the document. The plan to urgently summon you to support this time is likely to be leaked in this way." So, the other party did not continue to say the rest of the words. But Qingming already understood what he meant. Obviously, Nara Qingming was telling him with practical actions that they were not willing to let the plan leak. At the same time, it was also in this way to regain their trust. It must be said that the other party's method was very effective. Although Qingming is still worried about the intelligence system of the camp, he no longer has the sense of urgency that he will be stabbed in the back at any time. As for the intelligence being leaked by his own people, this is almost impossible. Because there are many things involved in the dozen or so leaks he has seen, not to mention those that he cannot access. Even Danzo dare not take the blame for this level of blackpot. Moreover, with Nara Qingming's intelligence, he must have considered this possibility and conducted a thorough investigation. But since the leak is still going on, it means that the other party is not involved in this matter. Otherwise, Nara Qingming would have reported it to Sarutobi Hiruzen and asked him to suppress Danzo. After all, this is a major event related to the frontline battle situation. Even Nara Qingming can't turn a blind eye. So, who is it? Qingming was puzzled, and even when Nara Qingming assigned him tasks later, he was a little absent-minded. After leaving the office, Qingming shook his head and didn't think too much for the time being. Instead, he followed the order and immediately rushed to the frontline battlefield. That's right, this time they didn't even have time to rest. After talking, Nara Qingming sent him to a battlefield. As for Uchiha Shisu, the other party had completed the report long before him and was sent to another battlefield by Nara Qingming. From this, it can be seen that the battle situation here is indeed not very good. However, even though Qingming had expected it, he couldn't help but frown when he actually came to the frontline battlefield. Originally, according to his idea, his side was fighting on the home ground, and even if the defense line was torn open due to insufficient frontal combat power, there should be no problem with logistics. But the real situation is that there is a problem with logistics supply now. It's not that there are not enough supplies, but the team that transports logistics supplies is frequently hit, and the things can't reach the hands of the frontline ninjas at all. This makes the Konoha ninjas on the frontline have to continue fighting under the shortage of supplies. Especially in the past 2 days, Konoha was caught off guard, and there were major changes on the frontline, and the supply of supplies became even more problematic. Suddenly, Qingming thought of the file he had just seen, and several leaks on it were related to the route of the logistics transport team. Really unscrupulous. With a sigh, Qingming stopped thinking about it and continued to understand his team. In the next period of time, he will fight side by side with these people. Although Qingming doesn't expect these people to help him, he still needs to have the necessary understanding. And these Konoha ninjas did not reject his arrival at all, and they were even overjoyed. Even if they did not deliberately learn about the name of the ghost sword Qingming in the past few months, they had heard something about it. Having such a powerful ninja join them would only make them happy, and they would never be dissatisfied. In this situation, even those who have some opinions about the Uchiha clan dare not say much. Thanks to this, Qingming was integrated into the team smoothly. The sun rises and sets. In a blink of an eye, 3 days have passed. 3 days ago, he just arrived at the battlefield here, and a battle broke out at night. And until today, he has experienced more than a dozen battles of varying sizes. It must be said that the Mist Ninja here is much stronger than the Mist Ninja in Fiyu Town in terms of both number and strength. On the first day, he relied on his hard power to kill 2 of the other side's Jonin. But on the second day, more mist-hidden ninjas came to target him, and each of them was very strong. If he exerted his full strength, Qingming would still be able to cause damage to them. But the situation is delicate now. Qingming really doesn't want to be too prominent, so he didn't use his full strength. After feeling that he had attracted enough attention, he and the other party were in a stalemate. The command center had no objection to his choice, or rather, Naruto hoped to achieve this effect, because what they lack now is time. Therefore, not only Qingming was delaying, but other Konoha ninjas who came to support were also trying to delay the pace of the Kurigakure attack as much as possible. Now, they only have to wait for the village's long-planned plan to be implemented, and they can completely repel the Kurigakure ninjas. And this time point did not make Qingming and others wait too long. Chapter 499, Awakening. The next day, in the evening, Qingming had just led his men to repel a wave of attacks from the Mist Ninja when he received news that Naruto had sent someone to convey the latest order. Without bothering to wipe the blood off his body, Qingming went straight to the rear of the position and walked into a room. He looked at the Chunin in front of him and asked directly, "What are the captain's orders?" Hearing this, the Konoha Chunin didn't waste any words and immediately handed a warrant to Qingming. Qingming carefully checked the warrant and confirmed that there was no problem before he made a seal and removed the seal on top. Opening this envelope-like thing, Qingming pulled out a piece of paper full of numbers and symbols. Obviously, this is a ciphertext. Next, Qingming had to translate it himself to get the real information. It's not Naruto's fault that he made things so complicated, but that the spy who couldn't be found out was really crazy. In the past few days, he was still stealing secrets crazily. This caused Naruto to be so careful. Qingming quickly translated the secret code on the note in his mind and soon got the latest instructions. However, his expression did not change from beginning to end. He just hesitated for a moment, then put away the order, and said to the messenger Chunin in front of him, "I have received the order, you can go back and report." "Yes, Qingming Junin." After hearing Qingming's words, the Konoha Chunin immediately left the simple wooden house and left the position without any hesitation. Qingming closed his eyes and carefully sensed for a moment. After confirming that the other party had really left, he picked up the order again. Looking at the secret code on it, Qingming automatically translated it into understandable text in his mind. "This morning, the plan will start on time." Bang! A ball of fire appeared from his palm, instantly burning the note in his hand to ashes. Qingming exhaled lightly and blew it away. It was not until this time that a solemn look appeared on his face. As for the so-called plan, he only knew a rough outline before, that is, Konoha should use its advantage in high-end combat power to reverse the situation here. However, Konoha has been facing multiple fronts and it is difficult to transfer manpower, so it has not been carried out. Until today, everything is finally ready. Similarly, in the past 3 days, he finally knew the specific content of the plan. It is also very simple to say, that is to concentrate all high-end combat power and carry out a decapitation operation against the Kurigakure ninja. This head is not just the commander of Kurigakure, but also includes all high-end combat power. Naruto's goal is to destroy the command system of Kurigakure village here at one time. Without the command of the Jonin, even if there are more middle and lower level Kurigakure ninjas, they can't make any waves. As for Kurigakure reorganizing the command system and launching a new attack, this is indeed what Kurigakure will do, but it will take some time. And during this period of time, The result of the decisive battle between the village and the Sans village will almost come out. If there are no accidents, Konoha will be the winner. At that time, the troops over there will be transferred here, and they will not be afraid of the attack of Kirigakure village. It can be said that everything that Konoha's high-level officials did was to buy time. As for the simplicity of the plan, the simpler the plan, the less likely it is to have an accident, especially when the spy has not been caught. It needs to be simple and clear. Only in this way can it be kept secret to the greatest extent. Similarly, it is also because of this that until now, Naruto has issued the specific action time to these senior ninjas, and only to these senior ninjas. Even Qingming can imagine that the high-end combat forces sent by those villages to carry out the decapitation mission may not have arrived at the camp yet. It can be said that Naruto has tried his best this time. Shaking his head, Qingming no longer thought about this aspect, and instead muttered, "I don't know if Namokaze Minato will come this time. Such a good opportunity to brush up his reputation. Sarutobi Hiruzen should not let him miss it." Qingming thought so in his heart, and planned to walk out of the wooden house. But at this moment, his footsteps suddenly stopped, and the whole person froze in place, muttering, "Namokaze Minato." At this moment, it seemed that a meteor passed through his mind, illuminating all the darkness and making him think through many things. After a long time, he came back to his senses and was about to say something, but he didn't know what he thought of. After a slight hesitation, he immediately raised his hand to seal and unlock the protective seal on his head. Then, he concentrated his mind, consumed chakra, and opened the Byakugan between his eyebrows. The next moment, his vision penetrated the Konoha forward guard in the house, and took in everything within a kilometer. However, Qingming ignored all this and focused his attention on his feet. His vision passed through the soil and carefully scanned the nearby land. After confirming that there was nothing hidden below, he breathed a sigh of relief. After sealing the Byakugan again, Qingming began to re-examine the idea that had just popped up in his mind. Just now, from Minato Namokaze, he suddenly thought of the other party's 3 disciples. More than 2 months ago, when he heard that Shuang Town had been breached, he thought that the Hidden Rock Village would take the opportunity to invade the territory of the Land of Fire. Then, he thought of the Battle of Canopy Bridge and Obito's death later. Later, it was proved that his speculation was not wrong. After that battle, there was indeed news that Obito had died. Qingming still remembered that Uchiha Tihiro had told him that Kakashi had transplanted the Sharingan of their Uchiha clan, and someone wanted to take it back. Calculating the time, Obito has almost recovered from his injuries. Similarly, the Third Ninja World War is about to end. And this time point is almost the time for Uchiha Madara to give Obito the final blow, use Nahura-rin, make him completely disappointed with the world, and open the main Gekyo Sharingan. However, it is obviously unrealistic to kidnap Nahura-rin under the protection of Namokaze Minato, so what will he do? The answer is obvious, just transfer Namokaze Minato. If at this time, he happened to discover Konoha's beheading plan, would Uchiha Madara intervene? The answer is also obvious, it is almost certain. If you plan by yourself, no matter how careful you are, you will inevitably leave clues, but if you go with the flow, you can hide yourself to the maximum extent. Thinking of the spy that Naruto couldn't find no matter what. White Zetsu's disguise technique seems to fit the bill. This is the most perfect transformation technique in the ninja world, and it can't be discovered by ordinary means. As long as he uses this technique to replace a few innocent ninjas, he can easily obtain the corresponding information. As for how the Kirigakure got this information, Uchiha Madara captured Nahura-rin and sealed the 3-tailed beast into her body, using the Kirigakure Anbu. If the information can't be sent over reasonably, it's a joke. After connecting all of this, all the unreasonable places have explanations. From this, Qingming can almost conclude that this is the truth of the matter. It was precisely because of this that he hurriedly used his Byakugan to explore the surroundings, especially underground, in order to determine whether there was a White Zetsu hiding nearby. He didn't forget that in addition to the disguise technique, White Zetsu also has a mayfly technique, which not only has an amazing escape speed, but also can conceal its own breath. So, of course, he had to confirm it. Fortunately, the other party didn't seem to be targeting him. This made Qingming feel relieved, and at the same time he was secretly glad that he had not exposed his main Gekyo Sharingan in the past, otherwise he would definitely be targeted by Uchiha Madara. Judging from the opponent's layout this time, he is undoubtedly an out-and-out old bastard. If he is really targeted by him, he will be in trouble. However, this incident also reminded Qingming that he must not underestimate these old bastards in the ninja world, even if he has an absolute advantage in intelligence. After all, everything in the memory of the previous life is just a corner of this real world. In the corners that he cannot see, things happen every moment, and the secrets involved are not something he can detect just because he is in the game. Chapter 500 Preparations of Parties. In a flash, time came to late night. Ninja World. An unknown underground space. Uchiha Madara sat in front of the Ten-Tails body that looked like a statue. His hair was gray, his skin was loose, his face was full of wrinkles, and he was full of old age, giving people a feeling that he would soon die. In fact, it was almost the same. At this time, his life had come to an end. The reason why he was still alive was entirely because he relied on the Ten-Tails body behind him to keep him alive. It can be seen that there are some things like hoses connecting his back and the Ten-Tails body. It is these pipes that continuously inject the vitality of the Ten-Tails body into Uchiha Madara's body, maintaining his vitality and continuing his life. In the underground space, there was silence. Except for the occasional breathing sound of Uchiha Madara, there was no other sound. Time seemed to stop here, and the surroundings were terribly quiet. At a certain moment, a black shadow broke in here and came in front of Uchiha Madara. This black shadow was nothing else but the product of the will of Kaguya Otsutsuki, the first filial son in the ninja world, Black Zetsu. In order to complete his plan to save his mother with the help of Uchiha Madara, Black Zetsu had used various means to gain Uchiha Madara's trust a long time ago. In the end, he successfully made Uchiha Madara think that he was his creation, and then lurked beside him and became his assistant. In the past period of time, he was running around outside according to Uchiha Madara's instructions. Uchiha Madara opened his eyes when he felt the arrival of Black Zetsu. Suddenly, an indescribable aura emanated from him. This is the confidence and domineering of a top-level strong man. Even though he is now old, his aura should not be underestimated. His eyes swept across Uchiha Madara's three Magatama Sharingan, and Black Zetsu said in a deep voice, "The plan over there in Konoha has already begun. Should we act?" "Oh, has it already begun?" Hearing this news, Uchiha Madara's slightly turbid eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light that did not match his age. Then, he decisively ordered, "Begin the action immediately." "Yes, Master," Black Zetsu responded with a hint of meaning, and then his body merged into the ground and disappeared. Uchiha Madara did not notice the deep meaning in his tone, and immediately cast his eyes on the wall not far away after he left. His sight seemed to penetrate the wall and saw Uchiha Obito, who was complaining to White Zetsu on the other side of the wall. From his words, it is not difficult to hear that he wants to leave here and return to Konohagakure as soon as possible. "Konoha?" Uchiha Madara murmured in his mouth, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Crack inadvertently, the handrail on the right was crushed by him. Taking a deep breath to calm down his mood, Uchiha Madara murmured to himself, "It's almost there. It's almost there. Hashirama, I will prove to you who is right." As he spoke, he closed his eyes again, as if he fell into deep sleep. At the same time, behind a position somewhere on the front line, in a simple wooden house, Qingming stopped practicing the reflection heart technique and palm immortal technique, looked at the time, and then raised his hand to cancel the shadow clone technique. Bang! In an instant, all the shadow clones inside and outside the house exploded and turned into balls of chakra, carrying their own practice experience and memories of the past hour, and merged into Qingming's body. Qingming closed his eyes and carefully digested these experiences and memories. After about a quarter of an hour, he finally transformed all of them into the proficiency of the corresponding skills. With a thought, Qingming said, "Panel." The next moment, a familiar light blue screen appeared. Name, Uchiha Qingming. Age, 12 years old. Constitution, 19 spirit, 20 chakra, 85,500, 117,364,120,948, bloodline, Sharingan, Mangekyo, 14416/50000, 15,088 50,000, Byakugan, unawakened, 15/100, 16/100, skills, chakra refining technique, LV5, 2,886, 5,000, LV5, 2,998, 5,000, wind style, Recentrican, LV7, 8,200/20000, wind style, wind wings, LV5, 2,350, 5,000, LV5, 3995, 5000, Wind Style, Fierce Wind Palm, LV2, 310/500, Fire Style, Great Dragon Fire Technique, LV5, 420/5000, LV5, 805/5000, Fire Style, Unburned Scorching Technique, LV3, 725/1000, LV4, 1125/2000, Water Style, Great Shark Bullet Technique, LV6, 1580/10000, LV6, 4240/10000, Water Style, Water Wave, LV3, 60/1000, Water Style, Water Array Pillar, LV2, 400/500, Earth Style, Hardening Technique, LV6, 200/10000, LV6, 2200/10000, Earth Style, Earth Flow Wall, LV1, 21/200, LV4, 750/2000, Shadow Clone Technique, LV5, 3100/5000, LV5, 4190/5000, Chakra Absorption Technique, LV6, 3510,000, LV6, 4410,000, Rasengan, LV7, 12120/20000, LV7, 14010/20000, Palm Immortal Technique, LV8, 37,450,000, LV8, 40200/5000, Chakra Scalpel, LV6, 8500/1000, LV6, 9200/1000, Cell Extraction Technique, LV6, 2700/1000, LV6, 3100/1000, Heart Reflecting Technique, LV8, 18371/5000, LV8, 19715/5000, Chakra Control, LV6, 750/1000, LV6, 1000/1000, Guardian Seal, LV4, 1/2000, LV5, 10/5000, Sealing Array, LV2, 240/500, LV3, 20/1000, Perfect Skills, Heart Reflecting Technique, LV5, 0/0, Earth Style, Earth Spear, LV5, 0/0. As you can see, he has made a lot of progress in the past week. The first is the Heart Reflecting Technique in Earth Style, Earth Spear. These two ninjutsu, after his unremitting efforts, have been successfully promoted to the perfect state of LV5, 0/0. Among them, the former allows him to communicate with people at will within 20 kilometers. Although it is not as good as the memory of Yamanaka Inoue, who is magnified by the perception barrier during the Fourth Ninja World War, it is enough for him. After all, if the shadow clone is connected, the distance will be expanded to more than 100 kilometers, which is enough to meet his needs. As for the latter, it not only allows him to exert stronger power when he performs this technique again, but also, the perfection of this technique also allows him to reach a critical point in the mastery of Earth Attribute Chakra. Now, he can already start to develop the fifth chakra attribute. Unfortunately, now that the war is imminent, there is no good opportunity, so he can only put it aside for the time being. In addition to these two ninjutsu that he has mastered to perfection, in the past week, he also used part of the chakra he plundered to upgrade the Guardian Seal to level 5. As a result, its sealing effect has undergone a transformation. At this time, if he uses this technique to seal his Byakugan again, Qingming is confident that even if a shadow-level strongman is in front of him, he will not be able to detect any abnormality. This is also Qingming's preparation for the next decapitation operation in the village. It can be predicted that by then, whether it is his own site or the enemy, there will definitely be a large number of senior ninjas. With a level 5 Guardian Seal, he is not afraid of revealing any flaws. In addition, in the past week, when fighting with a mist ninja, he also used the power of the Sharingan to copy 3 ninjutsu: Wind Style, Fierce Wind Palm, Water Style, Water Wave, and Water Style, Water Array Pillar. Among them, although Wind Style, Fierce Wind Palm is only a basic wind-style ninjutsu. It can be used with flying props to greatly enhance their flying speed, which is a little useful. On the contrary, Water Style, Water Wave and Water Style, Water Array Pillar are very effective. The former is just an ordinary sea-level water-style ninjutsu, and there is nothing eye-catching about it. And the latter, although the learning difficulty is as high as B-level, the effect is exerted to the limit, and it can also extinguish Uchiha Madara's fire style, Great Fire Extinction, which can be said to be a good ninjutsu. However, Qingming has already learned the higher-level water style, Great Samiden Jutsu. This technique can not only replace the effect of water style, Water Array Pillar in all aspects, but can even achieve better results by absorbing external chakra to strengthen itself. Therefore, it can be said that it is completely unnecessary. Why did Qingming copy them? In this regard, Qingming can only say that it was a coincidence. After all, anything can happen on the battlefield, and he has no way to control everything. However, since he has learned it, he will naturally not give up. Perhaps learning various skills casually like this may be too much for others, but for him who has a proficiency panel, it is better to have more skills. As long as the chakra is allocated well and does not affect the improvement of other skills, there will be no problem. Qingming is developing in the direction of a hexagonal warrior, so it doesn't hurt to learn more skills. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.